We're live. What is happening, everybody? I hope everybody's having a fantastic quarantine. Goodness gracious. Well, it's been a minute or two, and I've kind of up and gone and done a thing. So if you haven't had a chance to check out any of the videos that I've done lately, actually, I've only posted a couple of videos lately. Anyway, Destroyer Scat, what's up from North Carolina? I like it. Them boys is in saying, what's up? What's up, man? So anyway, I've up, gone, and done a thing. We did the Rezo delete for the car. So if you haven't seen those videos, jump on that. Basically, it worked out like this. Man, you know, the install is pretty easy. There's not a whole lot to it. My only real advice on this is just make sure you've got a mask, your protection for your eyes, whatever that may be, either a fold down or goggles or whatever. Long sleeve shirt, fresh blades, good running saw. That's going to be what you're going to need to get it done. You're going to want to measure 2 or 3 or 4 times and only cut once. The big issue here, though, is, and what I've been asked is, what about drone? You know, what does the car sound like? To be honest with you guys, it does not sound really any different. There is no drone. It's a little bit louder, but there's no actual drone behind it. And that's really only at about 2,500 RPM. At cruise, like on the highway, you don't really notice anything different, you know, between 65 and 85, 90 miles an hour or up, depends on, you know, just whatever you want to cruise at. But the reality is that it's really not that different. And quite honestly, I've found in driving the car, I got to tell you, I really like the sound. And funny thing is I didn't even do it for the sound. I did it more for the aesthetic. So my pet peeve with the Challengers is there is just a visually nauseating breakup of the body line at the back of the car where those cans hang out just from the bottom of the car. It's a rear 3/4 view, and it was bugging the hell out of me. So I thought it would be great to get those things out of there and just have a cleaner look to the car. The Hellcats are already louder than the 6.4s anyway. I didn't really want it to be louder. I just didn't want to see those cans. And I knew it was going to pick up a little bit of volume, but I was happy, and I am happy to report, again, no drone. And the kicker here is, keep in mind, guys, I've got that Mopar rear seat delete in my car. And if it's going to be louder, if it's going to be annoying or drony, I'll pick up on it more with that rear seat delete. And it's not. It's just a little bit louder under certain conditions, and that's it. Never annoying. In fact, it sounds... So the best way I can describe it is it sounds like it has an aftermarket exhaust on it. And I know, it's got an aftermarket exhaust on it. Yeah, I get that. But what I'm talking about is it sounds like it has a full store-bought catback on it as opposed to just a Rezo delete. And the kit that I used the Pipes kit. And I know I'm going to catch a little bit of criticism. Oh, you went cheap. No, actually, I went convenient. Pipes was the only company that made a kit that used the stock tips, that used the right material and used the right clamps, that was realistically affordable. So the right price, the right hardware, it was a fun project. And I got to tell you guys, if you're thinking about doing it and you've got the tools and the time, I say go for it. Check out that video. It'll have, it's actually a 2-part video. There's a part 1 and a part 2. Part 1 has got the list of tools that you're going to need. Part 2 will cover some of the measurements that you're going to want to take for your car if you get that Pipes kit. If you decide to get the Pipes kit, I think you're going to be pretty happy with it. They're not paying me to say this. I had to buy this stuff with my own money. So, you know, they're not going to know who the hell I am if you say, oh, Brian Mason or B. Mason sent me. They're going to go, who the hell is that? Anyway, so you're not going to get any discount codes, but I will say this. It's already pretty cheap. You're looking at about $165 shipped to you right now. Whenever you're watching this, at least this is during the whole, you know, April of 2020. So you know what's going on now. But you're going to need blades and things like that. So Figure about 200 bucks all the way around if you're doing the job yourself and you need to buy blades. But let me say what's up to everybody real quick. TU is in the house saying, hey, OB, what's up, man? Michael Corleone saying, good evening, Professor Mason, got the arm flex, I like it. Mustang Lab 302 saying, what's up, dude? What's up, Stang? Efren's checking in. Is there any advice for more power on a 6.1? Absolutely. Same tricks that work on an LS. So you want to go long tubes, cam, a true through-ported throttle body, a tune to tie it all together. That's where you're going to want to be with that thing. It'll pick up a solid, right around 50 horsepower to the rear wheels, and you'll be very happy with it. Efren's saying he's got a mid-muffler and resonator delete. It is very loud. Yeah, it is very loud. Believe me, I know. I've had to dyno cars with that exhaust combination on it. Going through earplugs like you wouldn't believe. Alex is saying, what's up, B? Any gyms near you open back up yet? No. Not unless you're counting the garage or the street for me doing the run-in or the push-ups, which has been kind of few and far between, admittedly. Not unless you're talking about lifting spoonfuls of cocoa pebbles and shoveling tacos into my face. No, man, I wish that were the case. I am dying to get back into the gym. I would probably start making out with a heavy bag and start hitting one if I had one here to actually just work on combos with. So yeah, not yet, but we're hoping, and believe me, the first one that opens up, I'm going to be swarming in there, man. I got to get my lift back on. My gains are going away. My skill set is deteriorating. Like you wouldn't believe. And I laugh to keep from crying, by the way. Destroyer Scott saying, my car has no cats, no resonators, and a Corsa Extreme. It's dang loud. Yeah, I bet it is. And that's the big thing to consider here too, guys. The car is really not that much louder because I am still running the stock catalytic converters. If I was not running the stock catalytic converters, it would probably be unbearable. And that's kind of the tip over right here. Or let me just say this, I could probably get away with metal substrate catalytic converters and it would be fine, but without cats, I think it would be a little bit too loud. I would probably have to put in a set of resonators at that point at the tip, but just small ones to where you didn't see them. That's the big part. Let's see, Lone Wolf is saying, hey B, hope everything's going well. Finally got to drive my 06 Charger, super excited. I like it. You know, I tell you what, I've been spending a lot of quality time with Little Miss Revlon lately, and boy, she's running good too. Oh, that reminds me, I need to post up, well, actually I did a video today, just got through filming it for Ahmad. Ahmad is a viewer request video about things to look out for you know, if you're looking to buy a used Mopar. But I also did another quick one, I think it was like a 60 to 130 or 60 to 140 hit. And I'm showing the engine side of the Uconnect. Anyway, I know a lot of folks like seeing that. They like to, you know, check out and see what how their car stacks up in terms of timeline. So I need to remember to post that one up too. Let's see. Excuse me, check it in and say, B, the funny, this on my 2010 SRT8 Challenger, I deleted the cats, the rezos, and the suitcase muffler. But my Hellcat Challenger is still stock exhaust. Eventually, I will delete the mid mufflers. I will say this: the mid muffler delete on the Hellcats is not quite. It doesn't make it quite as loud as the difference, I should say, isn't quite as much as the delete on the 6.4s. Basically, because these things more or less have what you would consider to be a glass pack in the middle of it. So. In the middle of the car in place of a normal muffler. But yeah, it can definitely make it a little bit louder either way you go. You pull cats off of it, it's a major difference in volume. Symphonic saying, so I've had my manual GT now for 2 weeks. Come a long way in the shifting department, but man, I can never go back to auto for fun-spirited driving ever again. So here's what I will say to that. There are times where I really do miss a manual transmission. And I gotta tell you, the more I think about it, the more I would love to get my hands on another manual transmission car or truck for that matter, just to have fun again. The automatics are great, but what they give you in terms of performance, you end up lacking in terms of just outright driver engagement. And so, yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, once you start spending some time with that thing, you're gonna love it. That being said, you start getting stuck in traffic with that car, starts to get a little bit annoying. But even though I'm saying that, by the way, I drove manual transmissions for a long time as my daily drivers. And in fact, I used to use Mustang GTs as work vehicles because they were so freaking durable. You could beat them to death and they would never die. So, and all of those except for one, was a manual transmission. So, yeah, I quit even thinking about it. After a while, it's just second nature, but I get it. Let's see. Efren's saying, what cam should I use as an everyday driver? I mean, aside from stock, go with the smaller cam. I mean, the main thing is if it's a daily driver, you want something that's going to idle nice, that you can, AC is going to work just fine on. You don't have to have the thing idle at 900 RPM to, keep it from surging at stoplights. Go with something that is less than, say, 216, so something like 214 duration on the intake side, probably a 222 on the exhaust side. Lobe separation angle somewhere around 113. That'll make it a nice choppy little cam, not overly choppy. In fact, depending on the load profile, you may not even hear the cam at all. You'll still get a little bit of a bump in power, but really, if it's a daily, let's stop and rethink this for a minute. Do you really want to spend that kind of money on a daily and not get the full potential out of that car? And I guess what I'm really asking you is, if you're thinking about throwing a cam in it and it's going to be your daily driver, what else are you going to do to that thing that could potentially, put your reliability at risk? And at what point do you start to lose reliability in that pursuit of getting a more potent car? Interestingly enough, you ask a really cool question, because I've been in the process of trying to put one of these videos together about what the best modification for your car is. And that best modification is, don't modify your daily driver, or at least be sensible in modifying your daily driver. And in fact, some of the best money you can spend on your hot rod is to go buy a cash car or a cash pickup truck and use that as your daily, and then do whatever you want with your hot rod. But, and this is just my experience here talking, I've seen too many guys spend a lot of money on their hot rods, and keeping in mind, this is a progressive obsession. What ends up happening is they take their cars too far, and it basically goes like this, well, and while I'm in there, that while I'm in there phrase costs more than anything else. And if the while you're in there ends up being, well, we put a more aggressive cam, long tubes, obviously we out of tune, probably going to go with 100 1/4 shot. Next thing you know, you're throwing a ton of money and your reliability gets tanked the first time you start playing with that vehicle. So if it's me and it's my daily and I know that I'm not going to get anything else and I'm not really going to do anything else to the vehicle, long tube headers, high flow cats, a tune, again, a cam somewhere in the 214, 216 degree on the intake side, somewhere around 222, 224 on the exhaust. That'll put you right where you need to be as far as a good sounding cam that really won't affect drivability too much. Good little bump in power, not the biggest bump, but you'll still retain quite a bit of drivability down low. And don't get greedy with it. Leave it at that. Now, if you want a cam that just sounds awesome, makes a ton of power for your 5.7, then give Dr. Differential a shout. Ask him to send you a clip of that Joker cam, and that'll be a completely different game changer for you. It sounds like $1 million and it'll grow with you a little bit. But again, you start taking it much further than that, get you a cash car, because if you pop your hot rod and that's your daily driver, how are you going to get to work? Let's see. TOT's telling Scott, personally, I love the popping sound or popping noise. I do too. I'm kind of I'll complain about the noise, but I love to hear it pop. That's why I'm going to delete the mids so the overflow runoff noises will be even louder. I like it. Shawnee's saying, hey, B, what did you pick up for horsepower? Conservative 40 or 50 for sure. How good does it sound? So guys, let's get to the performance data on the rear muffler delete. Was there any performance data? Okay, this is funny. Okay, so I have data logged the car, and the main reason why I was data logging it was just to take a look at short-term knock retard, a little bit noisier, sometimes things rattle, whatever, and the buzziness can sometimes piss off knock sensors. So I figured I would just data log the car, make sure that there's nothing goofy going on, and there wasn't, and I did data log a couple, actually 3, 60 to 130 hits. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to have the car in high load for an extended period of time in 5th gear, kind of like running it on a dyno. And even though I don't have the car on a dyno, I do have the timestamp from the data log. And if it takes less time to accelerate from a pickup, from a roll from say 70 to 130, if it takes less time, then the car is making more power. So on most of the runs, I need to make sure I get my numbers right here. On most of the runs, it took 6.63 seconds from hitting the throttle at 60 miles an hour. When the car hit 70, I started the timestamp, and that takes away any lagginess or anything like that with the transmission. The car was either identical, 6.63 where it was before, or it was 1/10 of a second quicker at 6.53 seconds. Now, I don't have enough of a data set to say that this modification picked up any power at all. So don't take what I'm saying as the car picked up any power. What I can tell you is that it didn't lose any power, and any timestamp improvement is, I'm going to say it's falling within the noise, nothing to be concerned about. Although I will say this, the car sounds good when you stand on it. So, but anyway, no, the timestamp showed a little bit quicker, but I'll just call that somewhere within the noise. I think it was a little shy on gas. Maybe that was what caused it to be 1/10 quicker. I don't know. I doubt it. Anyway, there you go. No difference in power. But it does sound pretty good, especially at full sun. Vlagas, I think is that, if I'm reading that correctly, say, what else be gap my spark plugs today, clean the throttle body and the mass airflow, everything with battery disconnected. After test driving, it felt like misfiring, no codes, but shaking. Any guess? More than likely, you got some residual stuff on your mass airflow meter. I've had that happen on a Mustang, and I had it happen to me with my Corvette. And what had happened is the mass air meter actually got dirty. The filament got dirty, and that was causing the problem. I cleaned the mass air meter, problem went away. What could have happened in your case is when you sprayed into the mass air meter, some of the cleaner may still be, or could have gotten around that filament and just stuck to it. That's possible, but make sure you didn't damage the filament when you're spraying that cleaner in there. That'd just be a couple of things I can think of, but it certainly is going to be math related, but without a data log, I wouldn't really be able to tell you. But I've had that type of an issue before, and when I did, it was a mass air meter. Mustang is saying, how is visibility in these when docking port and starboard side? Oh God, they're awesome. So here's the thing, port side visibility, very good. That's where your pilot is going to be located. Starboard side, not so much, but these things are heavy enough to where most things do get out of their way. And if they don't, they suffer the consequences. You know, you get in front of a barge, you don't move the barge moves you. Ruben saying, I live in California. I got to turn down my iPad listening to cold starts without getting a ticket. No kidding, man. You guys get butchered up out there by stupid laws like that. Hattie is checking in saying, hey, you make something up, Hattie? High Life saying, nothing like the 8-speed auto. Yeah, in fact, in that video that I did for a mod, I didn't say as much in that. You know, unless it's got the 8-speed, you're probably not going to want it unless you're buying a used Mopar, unless you know the history, or if you just wanted a manual transmission 6.1 or something like that, or, you know, a manual 5.7. But realistically, man, that 8-speed is really where you need to be. Oh, Hattie's saying, how do Corvette C7 Stingrays do with E85? Do you recommend intake, sporty throttle body headers, or just leave it with corn and trans tuning? The C7 does okay. You know, it's not going to pick up a ton, although with an intake, long tubes, tuning, you can pick up, say 15 to 18 at the most in terms of horsepower. They do pick up more torque, just like the Hemis. They pick up more torque than they do horsepower typically. Although the LS, LT variants typically do pick up a little bit more, especially if you throw a cam at them. So, but if it's just me, for an NA car, I would not make the switch to corn. It would be deeper into my mods list. I just really wouldn't worry so much about it. There's not enough power really on the table, in my opinion, anyway, to go that route. Now, if you plan on, you know, going boosted, then yeah, that's a different story. But in this case, I probably wouldn't worry so much about it. Let's see. Oh, Sean's saying, I'm fairly happy with my stock Hellcat sound. My quad tips hide the rear mufflers. Sweet. Yeah, I'm just, you know, from a rear 3/4 view of that car, just, yeah, didn't like the looks of them. And only I would notice something like that too, you know. I think I'm the only person that's ever done an exhaust specifically for aesthetics. Most people want them to be louder, and I just wanted it to look a little bit different. TU saying, B, hopefully you can find a manual performance car as a project car for the channel in 2021. We'll see about it. You know, I've toyed around with some different cars as a project vehicle for the channel. And my thing is that it's got to be something that is just laugh-inducing. I don't want something well-balanced. I don't want a sports car per se. You know, I want something that is just a bunch of dumb fun. And that's why I've been leaning more towards trucks. I like them, one, for their utilitarian aspect, because, you know, you can haul stuff with a truck, but I like hauling ass too. And I used to have a lot of fun with different trucks over the years, and I've always been a little bit partial to trucks. So something along those lines. But I can tell you that, you know, if I found an old, you know, C10 with a 4-speed manual, I would be leaning pretty heavily towards something like that. Just do an LS swap, you know, throw a Muncie in it with a gear vendors, or, you know, any 5 or 6 speed, and call it good. I think that would be a freaking riot. So be fun to look in that direction. Oh, damn. Thank you very much, Sean. I appreciate that. Saying a little nugget for earplugs. Just kidding. Hope, sure it's sweet. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Again, the sound, thank you for the contribution, brother. The sound is, how do I put it? It sounds like it has an aftermarket exhaust on it. And again, as far as total cost, you know, you're looking at grand total of maybe $200 if you include the blades, and if you own a reciprocating saw or a right angle grinder, I would not recommend using that to cut it. Use a reciprocating saw and flip the blade upside down and cut from the bottom up. You'll be in good shape there. But thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Symphonic saying, I got an auto daily for when I'm going into heavy traffic. Yeah, that's the best way to do it, man. Scott's saying, to you, I like the tone, all right. I just don't care for the popping. High Life is saying, love my 5.7, not a daily, but maybe a once a month. Great car. 5.7s are a lot of fun, man. I've always loved those. And y'all know what my, what one of my all-time cars that I want to build is actually based around a 5.7. So, Ivan Drago, I must break you. Awesome scene in that movie. Shawnee's saying, I do miss the fun factor a little of my low 12s, 392 6-speed, but the time slip makes up for it. Absolutely. Poser's saying, what are your thoughts on the Ripatuned Incognito lower damper sleeve? No tune. Lots of buzz on the forums. You know what? I think that it is reckless and dangerous for them to sell that as a no-tune solution to power making. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I live down here near the coast. In fact, I live within walking distance of the water. So basically, I live at sea level. And one of the issues is that during the spring, fall, and certainly during the winter, we experience negative density altitude conditions down here. Because of that, that Ripatuned lower pulley does not do us any favors down here without a tune. And the reason for that is, look, when you're looking at short-term knock retard with these stock Hellcats, you're typically going to see somewhere around 3 to 4 degrees on average of short-term knock retard just on a normal stock car. These cars run lean, by the way, from the factory. Air-fuel ratio is 12.7 command equivalent AFR for these cars. So now let's say you throw a little bit more boost at it. Well, here's one of the problems. If you're in the middle of, say, January during one of the track rentals, and your air charge, your stock air charge goes to, say, I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of details. Let's say it goes to 1.5. It should be very familiar to anybody that's ever taken a look at a Hellcat tune. It is not uncommon to see air charge values 1.53, 1.54. So you can actually go above and outside of the parameters of the stock tune with a stock car. Now think about what happens if you've got more boost than that. In fact, think about what happens when you run lean with more boost and you've now fallen significantly outside of the range of your stock tune. Boom! The motherfucker blows up. And then who are you gonna call if that happens? Ripatuned is not going to cut you a check for a new engine. They're not going to buy you a new engine or a blower, not blower, but they're not going to get you another car to drive around. And I'm saying this in all seriousness. I'm not really saying this for effect, but it's a terrible idea in areas where you get negative DA, like significant negative DA like we do down here. Now, what if you live in Denver? What if you live in the high desert in Arizona? Well, okay, then you're above 2,000 or 3,000 feet in actual altitude. Then the best you could ever hope for would be, say, plus 1,000 density altitude. Well, in that case, it would make sense because you would simply be bringing it down. It's an altitude correction, basically. And that pulley is an altitude correction is what I'm getting at. And that would basically bring your KPA, the boost, the actual boost that your car sees, more in line with something at sea level. But in talking to Dr. Differential, who has data logged that pulley and has seen as much as 7 to 8 degrees of short-term knock retard on an untuned car in, say, 300 to 500 density altitude, that's not a good place you want to be. So I want to make it perfectly clear that I do not agree that that pulley does not need a tune. I would argue emphatically for the opposite of that. And if anybody wants to take me to task, I would implore them to do so. Because my statements are based around facts and they're based around data that is, this is what it is. There's no fudging this data. And if you can't pick up on my vibe a little bit, it pisses me to know that somebody would say, well, you don't have to have a tune. that this tune, it's a no tune required pulley. No disrespect, but if that's what you're selling, you be ready for the flurry of issues if somebody from any of the coastal regions buys one of these things and then pops a motor during a real low density altitude day. I'll take that a step farther. About 3 years ago, we had the Moparmageddon, the first of the annual Moparmageddon track rentals. The year of the first Moparmageddon, we had an incredibly low density altitude, very low DA, very low humidity, very cool, crisp days. We had more tuned Mopars popping because they were throwing too much timing, too much boost, not enough knock retard, hence the Moparmageddon, also known as the Mopocalypse. So ask me how I know that that's a bad idea. And I'll tell you the same thing every single time. Let's see, Jerry's asking, in your opinion, what do you think sounds better on a 392 mid-muffler delete or to swap with the mini race bullet mufflers? Swap it with the mini race bullet mufflers. That does sound better to me. It has a little bit more refined sound to it. It's not the loudness, it's the tone is a lot better. But yeah, swap them out with the mini race and I think you'll like it. Let's see, Poser saying, on a Hellcat, what are advantages, disadvantages of lower pulley versus upper pulley? Which would you prefer if reliability were a concern? Lower pulley. So here's what I would do. Innovators West, you would triple pin it. It's a 9% lower. That is the way that I would go. And it gives you a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to throwing an upper pulley on it if you want to do that later. But you've got different ways you can go about it. I like to do a lower pulley because you retain the same amount of belt wrap up top, which is important to keep from running into belt slip. You also retain the uncoupler pulley from the factory, which is a pretty good pulley. But I get it. That pulley is heavy, and some guys see that as a negative. So if you go with an upper pulley, I would suggest that you pin your stock lower crank. Either way, you're going to have to jack with the lower crank anyway. My thought on it is only have to mess with the lower, keep your stock upper, and if you want to go faster, you're just an upper pulley set away, but you're going to have to look at E85 and other fueling concerns and, quite frankly, requirements to make significantly more power at that point. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Efren saying, thank you, B. Thank you very much. Hottie's saying, what's the fuss up about this Ripatune Incognito? They offer a lower damper sleeve and a different supercharger belt and gains up to 90 wheel with no tune. Is it legit? How can you gain that? Yeah, I think hopefully I answered that question. And you'll know pretty much where I stand with that. The data just does not agree with it. Hell, this car's gone faster than one of the cars that they're advertising that thing with, and I'm at stock boost. So I got data logs to prove it. Shit, as a matter of fact, here's the funny thing. So at 70 degrees, this was actually kind of cool. At 70 degrees ambient temperature, I am at 176 kPa. To give you an idea, that translates to 10 and a half-ish pounds of boost. So, I mean, damn, I've got data on that. What's also kind of funny is that at 70 degrees ambient, typically the horsepower meter on this thing would read, before I started playing with a tune, it'd be like 680. Something along like that, 675, 680, maybe 685 on a like a warm day, like I was out playing with it today. And when I did the video where I'm showing the engine side, it hit 707, which I thought was pretty cool. Let's see. Catalyst saying, besides rods and pistons, what are other forged internals would be good for a 5761 or 64 before adding a boost application? So the 5.7, to be honest with you, the stock crank is pretty stout, but you know, yeah, you go crank with the 5.7. The 6.1 and 6.4 already have forged crank, so you're good to go there. I've seen those engines go real high in terms of power, so I wouldn't really worry too much about that. But other internal components, you're looking at push rods, you're looking at valve springs, you're looking at stand key tie bars and collars, depending on how high you're going to spin the thing. So those would be areas that I would look at, but I wouldn't necessarily worry about cranks on a 6.1 or a 6.4. Oh, wait, hang on a second, hang on. Posner, thank you very much. Saying thank you for the info, B. Thank you, Posner, man. I appreciate that, brother. Let's see. Oh, already went over that. Let's see. Thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, man. Symphonic saying, so I think my next mod in my GT is an intake and a tune. Any suggestions for tune? Bama, Roush, or VMP? Well, VMP uses Lund. So anything from Lund is going to be good. That guy has got more R&D and data on the Mustangs than anybody else, and would certainly be at the top of the list for me if the internet tunes or basically email type tunes were on the table for me. So yeah, any of those would be pretty good. I would say for me personally, VMP would be the first on that list. Let's see. Noah's saying, what cam would you choose in a 6.4 SRT being swapped into a two-wheel drive, short bed, regular cab Ram? I would say I've got a couple of them. Give Pikes Performance a call and ask for a cam for a 6.4, naturally aspirated. You'll get one of my cams, or contact Dr. Differential, and he'll be able to put together a custom grind for you as well. I've got a couple of grinds for that. I know that Dr. Differential just used one of his Joker grinds. And again, that's one of my grinds that I've come up with for the 5.7. It's actually a nitrous grind, but it works really well for the 5.7s and would work very well for a 6.4 as well. Try to stick around somewhere in the 220 degrees of duration on the at 50 on the intake side, really no more than 230 on the exhaust side. That's going to put you in kind of a sweet spot for that setup. That being said, anything really racier than that, it's not going to be much of a lope either. A little bit of a lope on a 6.4, but the main thing is you just have to remember that you got a heavy vehicle and you're going to have to get that thing moving. You need to be making power down low just as well as up top. Don't go to the bottom of the page. Don't try to get the most aggressive cam because you'll end up hating it. Go with a cam that is a proven performer and one that works well. Again, those are the two cams that I would suggest, and it just so happens that they're both my grinds. Y'all hang on just a second. I got to get my charger real quick. Bear with me just 1 minute, because we're about to run out of juice here in just a second. Hold that thought, everybody. Hang on just a second. About to run into a technical difficulty. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Talk amongst yourselves. Hang on. Time. All right, here we go. You know, the funny thing about camshafts is camshafts for Hemis are kind of a sticky subject for me, primarily because you cannot go too aggressive with a camshaft on a Hemi. And that's not to say you can't go too aggressive. You can put whatever you want. That's absolutely not the case at all. It's easy to go too aggressive with the Hemis, mainly because of the heads. Biggest issue with the Hemi is that they're a tumble port design. They got a big O intake valve, which is great for flow, but it's terrible for velocity. So just something to consider along the way. If you're going to be putting a cam into anything with the Hemi, please do not try to overcam them. It's not an LS. They're not going to react the same way. You can put more cam in an LS because the intake side just doesn't flow as much. They need more cam to work. Hemis need cam events set properly to work. Big difference. Let's see. Crazy SRT8. Hang on a second. Crazy SRT8 saying, hey, did anyone else read the article with Ralph Giles and was discussing producing super sedan Chargers with Elephant? Oh, it was from April 1st, so I'm sure that wasn't legit. Probably a joke. It sounds like it's a joke. Arthur Wallace saying, missed the last live. I don't even own a Dodge product, but you have so much good information. Salute B. Mason. Got the arm flex. I like it. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you for hanging out with us. Endless Combo saying Ram TRX quarter mile time. Yes, Trackhawk runs 11.7. I think you'll be doing good to see the TRX run somewhere in the 13s. That's a heavy vehicle, and I believe the TRX is going to have a slightly detuned version of the Hellcat engine. I think, but I'm not sure. It will not run an 11.7 though. It'll probably be more, I'm going to say mid to high 12s. Oh, MG42 saying 12.8. Yeah, we're thinking the exact same thing. Prep with lighter tires, 12.0. Yeah, you could. Tuned. You know, to get one of those in the mid 11s would be pretty good. I think that'd be pretty stout. Although, here's the thing. You're going to have a lot of room to make up with that truck. I mean, as far as, you know, mods and things like that. I mean, look what you can do with a regular Hellcat. Definitely get there. You might be able to see some in the 10s. It's just going to be limited by weight. Ivan Drago. In America, we eat chicken wings. In China, they eat bat wings. Not anymore. Not some of them. Let's see. Michael saying, last week, ordered a 205, 222, cam rod, springs, Hellcat lifters, long tubes for my 5.7, all because of you, B. Mason. I like it. Saying, loving the content. Sounds like that's a most performance cam. That's if it's the same cam I'm thinking of, that's a very fun cam. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with that thing, for sure. In fact, I think that cam, like a 108 or 110 degree lobe separation angle. But that's what you do. So the trick with the Hemis, it's all about cam event timings with the Hemis. Lift is almost irrelevant. For the Hemis, you only use lift to get to a certain valve event at a certain degree of crankshaft rotation. The amount of flow, it doesn't matter. You're basically playing with the lobe and you're playing with the acceleration rate of the valve train, and you're softening that with duration and lift, because, you know, if you got, let's say this is your lift, the tip of my fingers is lift. Duration would spread it out, make the ramp shallower on both sides. But this same lift would be with less. And so it's a much faster lifting, much faster event taking place at the intake valve. Anyway, I need to do a show just on camshafts. For you fellow motor nerds out there, I can talk your ear off when it comes to camshaft design and all that kind of good stuff. So definitely fun stuff. But yeah, when it comes to camshafts, especially for the Hemis, anything with a tumble port, it's more about getting to specific lift events at certain crankshaft rotations, and you're manipulating the actual lobe to get there because of concerns of valve train stability issues. It's pretty fun stuff when you start getting into the Hemis. TU saying, I flip and love this channel. Only P. Mason gives us the good like this. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that very much. Appreciate the kind words. Paul saying, hey, B, nice pipes you put on. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It was a fun little project. Poser saying, thanks for the info. Thank you very much for hanging out, brother. Appreciate the contribution again to the cause, man. It means a lot to me. Go74 saying, hey, B, how's it going? Man, it's going really well. Saying, important question. When I buy a 383 stroker kit from Comp Cams, will I get a sticker that's a deal breaker for my... I think you might. I think you might actually get something like that. Noah's saying, thanks, B. Appreciate the info. Thank you very much for hanging out. F. Joe saying, B. Mace, perfect timing for the show. I just got back from rolling up some local Camaros in my cat. Hope you're well, brother. Congrats on cleaning up Revlon's bottom. Yeah, no kid, man. Time to take the training wheels off of her. And yeah, I took mine out today, and I kind of social distanced myself around a Camaro and a Corvette today. So I did get a chance to play around with her and, Yeah, she social distanced herself just fine. Let me just put it to you that way. But to be fair, it was an unfair, lineup. I don't think that vet had much done to it, but certainly didn't have enough. Let's see, Go 74. I don't know if anyone else has the 3.6, but working on them at the dealership, I've noticed the oil filter housing is bad for cracking from people over torquing them. Haven't ever heard that before, but I'm not surprised. That's something that, speaking of over torquing, I can't tell you, this is one weird thing that happened with my car since we're talking about this oil changing stuff. When I did the first oil change on my car, I had to get a new oil plug because whoever put the oil plug on my car put it on, I think, with an impact wrench, and it was stripped. So yeah, that was fun. Oh, and by the way, all the work on this car before I got my hands on it was done at a dealership. Yeah, so there's that. Yeah, the Go 74, so don't wrench on it for sure. Paul Chris, I was saying, what GoPros do you use? I don't. I use this old-ass Galaxy cell phone. I need to get some GoPros so desperately badly, but you know what else? I need to get some editing software more than I need some GoPros. So, but yeah, I need to do both, as a matter of fact. Then boys running saying, the 2002 WSX or Formula is more valuable than a 1998 to 2001 WS6 or Formula. Not sure why that would be, but I don't know. Last year, probably. It'd be the last year for that car, so that's probably the reason why it would be more valuable. Yeah, 02. Yeah, it'd be 02 because that's the last year for that body style. Let's see. Xcash is saying 6-speed Trans Am, oil ATF or Mopar ATF. Oh, 6-speed transmission, AMSOIL ATF or Mopar ATF. I go Mopar ATF on that just to keep it consistent. AMSOIL is good too, but stick with the original equipment manufacturer stuff. It works great. It's what we used at the shop. Go 74 is saying the ultimate social distancing. You better believe it. It happens with my right foot. Go 74 saying, damn lube techs. Yeah, no kidding. Crazy SRT8 saying, yeah, the Cali lawmakers are responsible for the anti-carbon warfare on muscle cars, and they better start voting right or they'll be totally screwed. No doubt about that. Remember, man, it's within y'all's power to vote them in and to vote them out. Robin Ross is saying, hey, Mason, you think there would be any noticeable gains if I do ported throttle body and ported intake manifold and JBA shorties on the Scat? I know they come stock with shorty type headers, but would appreciate your opinion. Here's the thing. Intake manifold, yeah, but it's going to take an intake manifold that has been thoroughly worked. Most of the gains for the intake manifold are going to come in the throat area on a 6.4. And of course, in the runners, it's going to depend more on what kind of shape those runners are in. If they have a lot of casting flash, if you have a lot of core shift, that's where the difference is really going to lie there. But if you're talking about any real gains, it's that throat area is going to have to get a lot more attention than what most folks give them. Peak speed gives them quite a bit of attention, though. I know that when I port intake manifolds, I spend a ton of time on those throats. So there's that to consider. But yes, a true through-ported throttle body, meaning an 84 millimeter Fastman throttle body, will put you right where you need to be with that. Now, as far as any other type of exhaust, not so much. Long tubes will help, but only down low. You really won't pick up any horsepower up top with them. But it's the partial throttle and low end power that you pick up that you really notice more of a difference with those vehicles or with those exhausts on our vehicles. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're looking at those types of components. But to me, it's worth the cost. It's just, is it worth the cost plus the labor? I don't know. That's for you to decide on that one, brother. I've had a lot of luck with the stock manifolds, though. Let's see. Big Chillin' saying, if your bottom end is forged, what kind of power can you get out of it NA before boosting it? The same amount of power you can get with the stock internals. I mean, you're not really going to be able to turn it up differently with forged internals unless you're bumping up the compression ratio, which if you're going to go with any power adder other than nitrous, you're probably not going to be doing. So if your goal is to keep the car naturally aspirated, say you've got a 6.4, you're thinking about boost, you're a little bit on the fence with it, you don't really know what you want to do, you don't want to go boot, or you don't necessarily want to spend the extra money for forged internals, but you're being told that you have to. Look, here's the secret. If you're dying to put boost on the car and the engine is coming out anyway, this is what I would do. And you're going to be pulling the thing apart anyway, too. In other words, you're not buying a forged engine and selling your stock stuff. You're actually working on your stock block, etc. Before I spent the chunk of change on forged internals, pull the 6.4 apart and give it some ring gap. Open the ring gap up to, say, 27 thousandths, somewhere in that range, maybe even 28 thousandths. The rule of thumb is basically 6 thousandths per inch of bore for boost. I would say in the 6.4's case, I'd go maybe 6.2 thousandths, or somewhere in that range per amount of per inch of bore. So in other words, given about 27 thousandths of ring gap ish, cheat it to 28 if you want. Put the thing back together, put your blower on it, and just go run the shit out of it. Here's the thing. Chances are you're going to get just as far with that rotating assembly than you would with forged. You're going to save all that money. Now, if you pop that stock short block, yeah, well, maybe the forged would have held it, but maybe it wouldn't. And the thing is that forged doesn't necessarily mean you can handle more power. I mean, it's the amount of power, not the amount of boost, that you're more concerned with running. And really, power at this point has more to do with fuel quality and tuning, really more than it does stock components or forged components. I mean, I've seen stuff with forged components pop where stock components didn't. So again, fuel quality, don't get greedy with the tune. Put something together that works within the fuel quality that you've got. Bellissimo. You'll be very happy with that setup. Try to get overly aggressive with it, though, and do so at your own peril. You got to keep in mind, this girl behind me, stock Hellcat, renowned for being durable, and it still has powdered metal rods and hyper-eutectic pistons. So there are a lot of 1,200 horsepower Hellcats running around, making a ton of torque too, by the way. Let's see. Oh, and as far as, naturally aspirated, again, you're RPM limited, to be honest with you. You're limited to around 7,000 RPM with the stock valve train. So just know that coming into this, and that's, well, with the stock valve size. With an upgraded spring pack and push rods, Stanky tie bars and collars, you might be good to 7,200, but I wouldn't push it much farther past that. Just because it's a street engine. And on top of that, there's not an intake manifold out there that's going to support that kind of RPM. Well, I'll take it back, the Holly might, but you're just going to be giving up a lot of power down low. I would say if you're thinking about going forged bottom in, make sure you got your power adder already picked out. That'll be the easiest answer to that question. Go74 is saying that's another good thing about this channel. No political bullshit, just straight up car talk. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm into all of it. I don't care what brand is on it. I mean, you guys been around this channel for a while know that, I've been in and around every brand for a long time. And I know kind of, look, all of them have warts, bro. I mean, real talk. And I love them all. And it's not just the American stuff. I mean, I love everything. If it makes a lot of noise and I can make tire smoke, I don't care if it's coming from front tires, back tires, all four tires. If I can sling mud with it, I'm all about it. So yeah, I don't get into any, I can't put nitrous on politics. that stuff isn't fun for me. I like talking about, I like talking about my victories, by the way, just as much as I like talking about my defeats too, because there's nobody likes hearing about somebody else doing well. They want to be able to relate with you, and believe me, I got a lot of relativity, to say the least. Got my ass kicked plenty of occasions. That's how you get better, though. That's how you learn. That can be the catalyst for learning. A swift ass kicking will make you wonder what the hell just happened. And that question of what the hell just happened can lead you on the path of learning something pretty damn quick, because you don't want that hell to happen twice. Believe me. What do you think I work on so many combinations? Why do you think I data log so much? Let's see, Catalyst saying, why did companies like Oldsmobile, Pontiac, and Plymouth stop making cars? They stopped making cars because they were deemed to be economically invaluable by their parent companies. It's the only real reason. Those were all subsidiaries of a larger conglomerate, and when their brand and when their value as a brand, by the way, dipped below a viability standard, they get the boot, which is unfortunate because brands like Oldsmobile and Pontiac are some of the strongest performance brands ever, especially from the original muscle car era and into the 70s, 80s, into the 90s. So I think Pontiac had died a long time before that, though. When Pontiac quit having their own motor division, the PMD, when the MD of Pontiac died, that's when Pontiac really died in my eyes. And they were just basically being kept alive on life support by the LS or the LT1 before that. So just something to think about. By the way, a couple of my favorite engines are Pontiac engines. They had an overhead cam 6-cylinder that they put in cars, Firebirds back in the day, that you could actually hot rod to make some pretty serious power. And of course, the 400 and 455, the Super Duty 455 low compression engine. Little trivia on that: in factory stock racing, that engine's an 8.5 to 1 engine. They have a provision in the rules that you can go 1.5 points higher in the compression ratio. And if you go 1.5 points higher on an SD 455 and you get around 10 to 1, those cars start running mid-11s really quickly. The heads are unbelievable on those cars. So anyway, sorry, squirrel, but yeah, a couple of my favorite cars, Pontiacs for sure. Oldsmobiles, absolutely. Oldsmobile 455, thin wall casting, are you kidding me? Weighs basically as much as a small block Chevy, but it's 455 cubic inches. Pontiac, kind of the same way. So anyway, yeah, I love it. Man, some of my favorite cars were always the big Pontiacs, the big Oldsmobiles. Obviously the B-body Mopars. You guys know I love my big girls. So that's, my favorite cars were always Pontiacs, Oldsmobiles, and Dodges. And Plymouths, for that matter, Mopars in general. Robin saying, appreciate the info. Got the high five. Psh, thank you very much. Speedfreak93 saying, hey B, thanks for going live. Love the garage chats during those tough times. Yeah, me too, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all hanging out with me. I'll help keep me sane. So thank you very much for hanging out with me. Arthur Wall saying, that's a fact, B Mason. Thank you, sir. I like it. Samuel Jack saying, hey Mason, what air filter should I run to keep my car from getting coronavirus? Well, here's the thing. You want to make sure that you're running a factory-approved air filter. Like, for example, in the Hellcat, you guys know that I only run factory stock Mopar air filters. Anything else is going to let particulates by, or at least has the potential to let more particulates through. Particulates can be carrying the virus, and you don't want your car to catch the coronavirus. That would be a bad time. So stick with the factory stuff and you should be good to go. Just make sure you wash your hands and slather them up properly in hand sanitizer before you install that filter. Dim Boy is saying, let's just be real. GM knew that the people, especially younger people, preferred Pontiac and Plymouth cars, that it took away interest from the Camaro and GM scrapped them. Here's the funny thing. You should mention that. So when you look at the Grand National and the T-Type back in the day, there was so much politicking behind that car. It would smoke a vet from the same era. But then they upped the ante to the GTX, or GNX rather. What people forget about is that Pontiac snagged the same engine, that 3.8 liter turbo V6 out of the Grand National, and put it in the Firebird. And that Trans Am was faster than the Vet. So Pontiac and Buick had two cars that were in essence faster than the flagship hot rod out of Chevrolet at the time. Pissed off a lot of folks. I love that kind of shit. And, you know, more to the point, it was smaller than the 4.3 liter that was in the Cyclone and Typhoon. So anyway, nice little jab there, little twist of the stiletto in the ribs of Chevrolet. I like it. But yeah, it sucks that they took away the more, I don't know, I don't want to say sideshow brands because that's really not the case, but let's be real here. Ford and Chevrolet, they're the man, okay? When you're talking about working for the man, I'm not talking about the man, I'm talking about the man, right? The ones in the suits. That's Chevrolet. That's the establishment. That's Ford, the establishment, right? Pontiac and Buick, they kind of were, but they kind of weren't. You know, they had Pontiac as a separate motor division, and it was always a little bit more ruckus than Chevrolet. You know, it was kind of like that whorish little sister. You know, like the older sister, she looks good, but the little sister, she'll do some fucked up shit to you, and that's the one you really want to date. You might want to marry the Chevrolet, but we all know what we want to do to the little sister. It's kind of like that. That was Pontiac. And they had cool engines. They had the 421, the 400, the 455, the overhead cam V6. They had cool cars like the Tempest, which had a 327, but it had a transaxle in the back, and it was a sedan, kind of an interesting type of a car. And this is way before the Corvettes had that type of technology incorporated into them. You had a lot of really cool cars coming out of Pontiac. Buick, yeah, it got a little bit too much of a stuffy old person. You know, they quit making hot rods, at least after the, after the Grand National, the T-Type, that family went away. That was the last hurrah for Buick. But leading up to that, you know, back in the muscle car era, they had stuff like the Buick Stage 1, which was a crazy, sweet, big body, 455 powered hot rod. Lots of power, lots of torque, lots of refinement, just a neat car. And it stood apart from the man. And I think that was the thing, is there was some type of a disconnect there. And it was unfortunate that they couldn't keep that type of spirit going. And again, I'll say, I've said it already, say it again, when PMD, that Pontiac Motor Division, went away, again, the name was just kept alive by life support, and it was on its way out anyway. In fact, one of the cooler cars that Pontiac ever made that was kind of in line with that was the Aztek. And I know what you're thinking. What are you thinking about Aztek? Look, I thought the Aztek was, and I still think it's the shit, because it is quirky looking. It's got all these different features. You can do all this different stuff with them. I always thought that it would be the ultimate tailgate rig. I mean, you could do all this stuff with the Aztek, and it was universally panned at the time, and I thought it was the neatest shit ever in terms of, a vehicle like that. Like, if you're going to build something, throw the whole kitchen sink at it. If we're going to get stupid, man, let's get fucking stupid. That's what I like, right? So that's what Pontiac did. They didn't just get a little bit dumb. They got fucking stupid with it, and I loved it. And only now I feel like is it finally being appreciated. And again, that was the last big hurrah of that, let's do something different, let's make it our way division of General Motors. Anyway, it's a bummer that they're gone, but it's cool that we've got what we have and what they had back then to talk about. Let's see. Matt saying, how are you doing, Mr. Mason? Matt, I'm doing well. Hope you're doing the same. I believe you're the best YouTuber when it comes to anything Mopar, and I based all my mods on your channel. Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words, and I hope to keep earning your trust moving forward. X Cash has got his laughs on. Dim Boys Running saying, and I hear that GM stole the Banshee's design from Pontiac, which they later turned into the C2 Vet. You might be thinking, well, there was a few cars that were out at about that time. You had the Cheetah, the Banshee. There are a few, but the C2 would have been, that was still a Duntov design. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that was still, yeah, that was still an artist design, artist Duntov. So, but there are a lot of things that were going on back then when they started ganking things out of Pontiac's bin. Matt Muhammad saying, I have an 87 millimeter throttle body, TA 392 intake, MMX ported intake manifold, stainless works headers with deleted caps, Borla attack, exhaust, MMX, NSR, NA cam, 370 diff, Nitto Tri 5Rs in the rear. That should be a fun car, man. That should be a ton of fun to drive, especially if it's automatic. 370, yeah, that would be a shitload of fun. Especially if it's an 8-speed. F-Cho got his smiles on. MG42 Pillbox saying that wasn't cringy or anything. Matt saying, any thoughts on what else I should do to the 392? Not really. I mean, it looks like you've got pretty much the entire full house thrown at it. I would say that, you know, obviously I would refine the transmission tune just a little bit, but that would be about the extent of what I would do with it. Sounds like you're already off to a really good start. Go 74 saying Tip is a badass name. Yeah, it is. MG42 Matt gets small tires. It'll light them up for an amazing amount of time. Go 74 saying the Aztec is amazing for camping. Hell yeah, it is. Arthur Wall saying, yeah, B. Mason, I wish Chevrolet would bring back Pontiac back. A different take on the newer Camaros is much needed. That more aggressive street edge Pontiac would definitely sell well in these times. Yeah, it would. You know, where I thought Pontiac could do really well, and it's just a shame that we've got so many, the market is dominated by SUVs, right? But how cool would it have been to have a direct line of sight competitor to the Charger and to the Challenger for that matter, just having a larger car, but mainly, anyway, bring back the Catalina. That would have been stupid sweet. Big car, a big sedan, you can make it a 4-door, it's not a big deal. They did that to the Charger. But instead of having the Malibu or the SS, which is just, there's no emotional tie to it in any way. I mean, Malibu, you don't really get, there's somebody from the Midwest is not going to get an emotional tie to the Malibu. In SS, I mean, sounds a little Nazi to me. But anyway, SS doesn't really do anything for me either, but you bring back the Catalina. Man, the Catalina was such a badass car. Anyway, thought that would have been cool to come out with. But again, that market segment just is not viable enough to bring back that type of a vehicle. So, kind of a pain in the ass. Ken saying Pontiac always marketed their cars towards people like us. Yeah, kind of, sort of. Just really cool, really neat, quirky cars that were fast as hell. F-Joe is saying, my high school project car dream was a 70 Buick Grand Sport sitting in a guy's backyard. He wanted more than I could afford, but those things were awesome. Yeah, those were very awesome, as a matter of fact. HU37, I'd love to get my hands on one of those myself. HU37 saying, out of all the American car companies that went out, GM is the only one that kept a defunct trademark. They kept the Pontiac. If Camaro continues to be a sales failure, screaming chicken, anyone? Yeah, no kidding. Shawnee's saying, love the 20th anniversary Turbo TA, 1989. That's the one. Nasty little car, too. Ken797 saying, what the GTO could have been. Yeah, so let's talk about that. I remember back in the day when they were talking about releasing the GTO, they were talking about we're going to make a GTO. And if you go on Google and you look up the different GTO concept cars, they were kind of bigger. Yeah, they were concept cars, but they showed nothing like what we got, which was the Holden. And really, of the Holden imports, I think the G8 was actually a little bit better car than the GTO, only because, I don't know, maybe the proportions were about right, but I don't know, I could be dreaming that up, especially in light of the fact that they had narrow wheel wells, and it was just, like I say, it was a Holden with kind of a looking front fascia and rear fascia design. Holden front fascia is far and away better looking, but it was still a Chevrolet with a Pontiac emblem on it, even though it came from Australia. And I always thought that was a missed opportunity. Yeah, when you're selling a brand, the brand of the GTO, you need to sell a car that is really harkening back to that muscle car era. You know, the big, you know, B-body sized car with the big engine and the big power and all that. And we got this thing that was more or less a mid-size out of Australia, you know, this import, basically. It was not GTO as far as I'm concerned. I never referred to it as a GTO. I mean, yeah, it's a GTO in name, but you called them Holdens down here. I mean, it was just, at least those of us in the know, and don't get me wrong, I mean, it's not that I don't like the car. The car, if you take it in a vacuum, in other words, if you don't allow for comparative discourse with the GTO, it's a great car. But the problem is that you can't truly be in this lifestyle, not know the significance of GTO, and not know that its place in history is every bit as important as the Corvette and the Mustang. You can't be in this lifestyle and know these and accept these truths as fact and then bring in a fucking import and call it a GTO. Are you crazy? Have you lost your mind, GM? What the fuck? And you think that Pontiac loyalists were going to take to that thing? You think that Pontiac loyalists were going to look at that and go, oh my God, I've got to put that into my garage? That brings back so many memories? Hell no. They're going to look at that thing and go, it looks like a fucking electric razor. It was absolutely infuriating when I found out that they were dragging in something from down under and we're going to rebrand it as the GTO and wheel that out as the next bastion of some kind of an American muscle car. The only thing that I could think of is, since when do the Aussies do muscle car better than the United States? Oh wait, Falcon XB, Holden Ute, Mopar Ute. Damn, so far we're off to a pretty sketchy start. Yeah, they do muscle car pretty good, but this is an American staple here. This is the freaking GTO. It would be equivalent if we imported, I don't know, pick something from somewhere else, brought it into the United States and said, this is the Corvette. That would go over about as well as a fart in a confessional. You mean to tell me that GM had the fucking balls to try to pull something off like that? That to me was as insulting as it could possibly get. I mean, that's walk up to you and punch you in the mouth kind of insulting to a true blue freaking Pontiac fan. So when I hear about the new GTO, again, I have to take that car and accept it in the vacuum that we're in. It's not the car's fault. I don't have anything against the GTO. And read into that, I don't have anything against the Holden. But what I do have is, I have a real problem with the fact that GM thought that it would be acceptable to bring that car in, call it the GTO, which again would be akin to, you know, pulling in a freaking Capri from the UK and calling that the Mustang. This is an American icon, and they completely missed the boat here. And this has been part and parcel to the hubris of General Motors coming into this. This is the problem when you are the establishment. When numbers mean more than your legacy. When shareholders making an extra 0.25% means more than the story behind your brand itself. That's just running something out there. That is the Webster's dictionary textbook definition of phoning it in. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Go 74 is saying Pontiac G8, love that car. Yeah, they're sweet. Or the Bel Air for that matter would have been another one to bring in. Cool name. Calisana and I saying, how much does rotational mass, i.e. lightweight wheels, come into play for going faster, and is forged aluminum safe? Forged aluminum is fine. As far as rotational mass, it has more to do with the rear than it does with the front, because you're having to accelerate a specific amount of mass to a specific RPM. That inertial drag is what you're trying to overcome. The front tires and wheels, on a typical 10-second car, you're looking at maybe saving 3/4 of a tenth at the most. On a 11 or a 12-second car, maybe 1/2 tenth at the most. Just some things to consider, as far as actual amount that you're going to save. If you're chasing a number, then it's worth it. If not, it's not that big of a difference. Oh, but for the rears you could probably say it's worth about 1/10 to 2/10. Let's see, Ken797 saying, had they done what Dodge had done with the Challenger, they would have sold 1 million of them just like Dodge did. Yeah, that's my point exactly. HU37 saying, the beginning of the end for the GTO was the Firebird in the muscle car area. GTO became too heavy. The Australian version didn't have the GTO identity. And that's really, more to the point, is that it just didn't have, it was an import. Again, you cannot take an iconic American name and throw an import at it. You can't do that. Not with the GTO, not at all. Not for what it means to the American muscle car community. Ghost is asking, anyone watch Vice Grip Garage? Dude starts cars that sit for 20 plus years and draws it for over 500 miles. Haven't seen it, but I have. I love the concept of it. BK Red Eye saying, B Mason, hope you're safe out there. And what do you think about Demonology going to New York City to change his motor? And is it worth what he's doing? Give us info on that engine. So I can't give you all the details on that engine. I just don't have them. But is it worth it? Look, here's the thing. At this stage of the game, let me break it down for you like this. Brian Sanders is on top of the list for 8-speed cars. Ran an 852 at 100 and shitload miles an hour. Z is running 858, something like that with the Charger. That car's actually got a little bit more in it than that, by the way. I think Herman might be third on the list, third or fourth or fifth or whatever number he is on the list for Demons, Hellcats, what have you. He might be top of the list right now or second place for stock displacement. Look, here's the thing. It's an 8-second race car at that point. It's borderlining on it's a trailer queen once you start getting into those types of numbers. So is it worth it? Look, I am a big fan of streetable, street legal, drivable, enjoyable cars. I don't care whose brand it is. One of my favorite cars that I see at the track is actually a truck. It's a low 9-second LS turbo truck. You'd never know it by looking at it. Damn thing will go low 9s. I like stuff like that. So, and the guy drives it there and back. I mean, it's quiet, the whole bit. Nice guy, by the way. But there's a fleet of those things down here. A lot of them. And one of the faster ones runs 760s, 770s. Until anybody is running those types of numbers, it's really not going to get my attention. So, if it's modified. Cars like mine, Mustangs with a blower, that are running in the high 9s, low 10s, Hellcats like mine that are running in the low 10s, those are the cars that get my attention because those are the guys that drive their cars to and from the track. They take their kids for rides in them. They take them to go get ice cream. They're street legal. We're talking cars with catalytic converters, all of that. So it's just another race car, man. I mean, it's impressive what folks are doing, especially when you consider the weight. But when you're talking about throwing that kind of power at one of these things and the downstream waterfall effects that can come with it, in other words, transmission problems, drive shaft issues, rear ends, you're trying to deal with a bunch of weight in the process, it takes it out of the fun realm for me, and I like stuff to be fun. I don't need this chase of a number anymore. I used to be that guy, so I get it. I mean, I'm completely understanding of the why behind it. I just hope that it's worth it to him and to the rest of the guys that are doing this. He's chasing some really fast guys right now, and he's definitely looking at an uphill battle. If he's throwing the kind of coin that he's talking about throwing at that car, he's got a real chance to be in that conversation. So just depends on how deep he wants to take it. If it's a stock displacement engine, I'd be real interested in it because, going after the likes of, the fastest of the 8-speed cars is going to take a whole lot of giddy up and go. So cheers to you, brother. Hope you get it, man. I'll be on the I'll be in the stands cheering you on, though. Not gonna throw myself into that realm. Let's see. Then boys saying, I'm pissed that GM didn't bring back over the Holden Ute to the United States. No kidding. That would have been sweet. Why bring over the GTO when you have the Ute ready to go? Anyway. Paul checking in. Paul Christoph saying, do I have to change the shift points if I go to the 309s? It shifts at 6,400 now. 154 60 foot is his best. Nah, you're in good shape right now. If you switched over to 309s, and obviously I guess we're talking about a Hellcat, you're already shifting at 6,400, means you already have a tune on the car. No, you'll be fine at that level. Keep on rocking, brother. I would change your driver command torque though. Give it a little bit more if you're still stock again in your tune, because I can tell you right now you do have a tune on the car. I would kick up your driver command torque with the 309s just so that it feels kind of peppy. They oddly enough, they feel a little bit soft with the 309s because you just don't have that 262 to be pushing up against all the time. That's what I've noticed or what I've found. Lone Wolf is saying, don't forget about the 80s Dodge Chargers. Yeah, we try to forget about those. Actually, given the climate of the day, I would say that those cars were more appropriate than the Holden GTO would be, only because that was where the entire market was trending, and at least, well, it was still kind of Omni-ish. Anyway, yeah, let's try to forget about those. S. Cash is saying the 0406 GTO is great. I almost got one, but I agree it's not a real GTO. My 70s Le Mans is more of a GTO than that thing, and that is an awesome car, by the way. Raul saying, makes an honest answer between Dodge's Hellcat 6.2 supercharged engine and Ford's Predator 5.2 supercharged engine. Which one is better? The Ford, honestly. Better technology, but you got to remember that better is always subjective, and it is only objective based on the data set that you are comparing it to. So here's the thing. From a sample size standpoint, the 6.2 is better because there are far and away more Hellcat variants out there that have been putting in a lot of work and have been really successful leading up to this point. You just never hear of any failures out of them. Like ever. Like never ever. We don't know that about the new platform. It's just, it's not there. So from a technology standpoint, obviously GT500 is better. But from a practical standpoint, I would say Hellcat's probably got it beat, and I'm hoping that none of the issues from the Voodoo platform plague the new engine. I doubt that that's going to be the case though, because it's not a cross plane. But again, it's just some things to consider. You know, is it going to have a tick? Is it, you know, the typewriter thing going to happen? Who knows? But unfortunately, the data set really isn't out there. But I will say this: Ford does not build junk, and that engine is going to be extremely stout. I would be very interested to see where that engine can be taken with modifications. I have a feeling the heads flow unbelievably well. And if the Coyote is any indication about what you can get out of one of those engines, I would say it will just be more of the same when it comes to that. I just can only think that the transmission situation will be the biggest mitigating or limiting, I should say, factor in the success of that engine moving forward. So I think VMP has taken one of those engines and put him in an S550 with a manual transmission, and it hauls ass. But again, what can you do? I mean, you start to look at it from the standpoint of just car guy in general. And, you know, when you say, is it better, do you take the engine alone, or can you even talk about the engine without talking about the package that it's brought to you in? So there's that. But anyway, that's about the only way I can answer the question. I mean, my first answer is that the Ford engine, from a technical standpoint, is going to be better all the way around. But there's a lot of times where a better technology or better all the way around means that there's some Achilles heel that's lurking in there. And I'm hoping that's not the case. But only time will tell. So first answer, probably the one I'll stick with. Go say it. Hellcat hands down, but I'm biased towards Mopar. Let's see. Ken is saying faster than 10.0 equals roll bar is mandatory at most tracks. No fun on the street. Yeah, that is true. Although I will say this, most tracks will not really enforce that until you start going above 150 miles per hour. So 9s, you're probably okay as long as you've got a modern car. But the minute you start going deeper than, say, 147, 148 miles an hour, be on the lookout, because you might get flagged at that point, because that is laundry time. That's parachute time. So just keep that in mind when you're building your hot rod. Let's see. Catalyst99 asking, if you had a 51 Nash Metropolitan with the Hellcat engine, would you use it as a daily driver? Absolutely, I would. Why not? Hellcat's a great engine for daily driving. It idles nice, doesn't bloat, very smooth running. And the Nash, it's lightweight, so it'd probably get good fuel economy too. I'd keep a 262 rear gear in it, 8-speed automatic. Like I say, I think it'd probably get really good fuel economy, and entering and exiting traffic would be a breeze. Let's see, Sherrod is asking, what is the fastest true full interior street car you have seen in your area? Good question. Would probably, like, fastest, like if we're talking roll racing, probably some of the, well, it depends. But either there are some of the GTRs down here that are stupid fast, and the Corvettes. A couple of Lambos here too, a couple of turbo Lambos that are like stupid fast. But you just don't see those very often. In fact, most of those are just only drug out during 2K. They don't even do the Houston Blitz or anything like that anymore. Some of the hood rat shit we used to do back in the day. So, yeah, that would probably be, well, that, or, like I say, you got, some trucks down here, the Turbo LS trucks. If you consider that full interior, you got trucks that'll trap in the 154, 157 mile an hour range down here. So, give you an idea. I mean, there's kind of a slew of vehicles that are full interior that are really fast down here. So, HU37 is saying the funny part about the 0406 GTO is that the Cadillac CTS-V in that era was more of a GTO than the GTO was. You might make that point. Speed Freaks saying, you think drag strips will open this year as the talk of sporting events will be canceled until maybe football in November? For private track rentals, probably you could get away with that, but not for typical street night. But I don't know. We'll see. It depends. If everybody keeps practicing their social distancing, keep wearing your mask, doing all that kind of stuff, you'll probably, see maybe some lightening up of that. But I don't know. It's tough to say. We're still real early in this. The 3-week turn on the coronavirus for the states is coming up fairly soon. That's basically the end of next week. And so that's when we really should start to get an idea for where we stand with this thing. And then from there, start making plans for the next 2 to 3 months afterwards. Which is weird too. So when I see the data come back on the coronavirus, it's weird. You go to Worldometer and you look at all the data. It's interesting because the data starts to look like a data log to me. I start looking for patterns in, like, for example, the infection rate. There for a while, it still is the case, really. Every state in the United States, if you took them all as data points, it looked like O2s switching back and forth between the different states, basically picking up 10% every day. They're growing by 10% the number of cases per state. Some would be a little bit more, some would be a little bit less, but they were all trending like they had 10%. They were basically, the correction factor was 10%, and it looked like the O2s switching and the fuel trims on an engine with an exhaust leak with long tube headers. And so it was adding more fuel, and the more fuel at 10% was the more people. It's like, damn, we got to figure out a way to drop the number of people. And in other words, we got to drop the amount of fuel down to 0. Your idea is to switch back and forth between 0%. So anyway, there's stuff like that when I'm looking at that data set. I go straight into data log mode because I'm looking at data. And it's interesting to watch that unfold. And not that it's interesting like neato, it's horrifying, but it's from just a pure data acquisition standpoint. For somebody that's used to looking at data logs, there's a lot of things that mimic it. And the other part of that is there's a lot of information that we just don't know. There's a lot of things going on that we just don't have data sets on, or that we don't have enough time of data sets to form an opinion. So again, it's just weird. Folks will say, hey, make sure you stay safe. And I'm going, yeah, I'm definitely staying safe. And I'm watching the data too. And it's, as we all have our own, things that we're trying to do to get by during this horrible situation that we're in. It was just weird. I'm data logging the car, and I was thinking, God, or I'm looking at the data, and I was also data logging the car, and I was thinking, God, there's so many weird things that are kind of correlating here. At least is asking. The Hellcat is a very proven engine. It's amazing. You can take 700 horsepower car on a road trip and be comfortable. I'll tell you what's weirder than that. You can take a 700 horsepower car, be comfortable, have factory warranty on it, and the reality is that it's incredibly reliable just in day in and day out use. Who would have thunk it? Callus99 saying, do you ever see anyone with a turbo Challenger at the track? No, I don't. The reason for that is packaging. One of the issues with the LX LC platform is that the wheel well is integral to the engine compartment, as opposed to the wheel well being removable in other platforms. Just think like G-Body, Camaro, things like that. The problem is that it is difficult to package turbos in this car. And a lot of guys just don't tackle it. They don't take it on. The kits that I have seen are a little clumsy, if I'm being honest. Now, that's not to say that you can't put a rear mount setup on it or something like that. But what I'm getting at is there's no real dignified way to package a set of turbochargers in this platform. Most guys will go with a positive displacement supercharger, or, any type of the centrifugal supercharger will be just fine. Pro Charger obviously being the most popular. If it's mine, that's the direction that I would go, would be the root style supercharger. Basically the E-Force using that 2650 compressor, fantastic kit. And if I had one to build, that would probably be the way that I would go, because again, trying to package turbos on this thing is kind of difficult, and I just don't think you're going to be able to properly set it up. Now, if I had a truck, that might be a little bit different story, because you got a lot more room to work with, but not for the cars. Shawnee's saying, I drove my Hellcat from Minnesota to Texas, ran a 1007 and drove it back home while listening to satellite radio with no problems. Yeah, and Sean, I'll take that a step farther. You drove it from Minnesota to Houston, had basically a motorhome's amount of stuff inside the car, raced it, went 10-0s, drove the car back home to Minnesota. Yeah, that's how reliable these things are. 10-0s, and it's a freaking family truckster. And then Ghost is saying, Sean, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so that's kind of these modern cars in a nutshell. You know, the interesting thing to me, and what folks tend to forget about, is just how reliable these modern cars are. You know, we were just talking a little bit ago about, you know, the Catalinas, the SD455s, the 73 and 74, by the way, are my all-time favorites. The Pontiacs, and it's like SD455, 73, 74 are right up there with my Roadrunner as far as, you know, my favorite cars of all time. But anyway, those cars by today's standards, I mean, they're just, as far as sophistication, there are riding lawnmowers that are about on the same par as those things in terms of actual sophistication. But you got to remember that they were built back at a time where the cars were just less expensive. And I don't mean that in respect to the cars were less expensive by way of a inflation calculator correction, but they were less expensive per dollar that you earned. You know, if the average person earns $50,000 a year today, well, back in 1968, 1970, the average person made $5,000 a year, literally a 10-to-1 difference. And so if a car cost $3,400, it would be the equivalent of $34,000 today. But that same car, let's say we're talking about a Challenger, for example, that same Challenger would now cost you, instead of $34,000 for a fairly well-appointed big block Challenger, you're gonna have to spend $45,000 for that same car, maybe even more. And that puts it like $4,500 back then. You can see kind of what I'm talking about. So the reliability isn't there, but then again, they were simpler machines back then. They just didn't soak up as much money. The point of this, talk about going around your ass to get to your elbow. The point of this that I'm making is they were disposable, or viewed upon as being playthings back then. And you would wear them out, you'd sell them on to somebody else, and you wouldn't think twice about them, which is unfortunate as hell. But that's the way it was. And manufacturers were banking on the fact that, you know, they knew that these things didn't take up as much of your disposable income as modern vehicles do today. And so people would trade them in every couple of years. You know, they'd have their fun with the fast one, they'd get rid of it, trade it on, and get something else. And there was always something new, faster, better right around the corner. Well, that is until there wasn't. And that's when we hit the malaise era with all the, you know, the Matadors and Aspens, although I do really like Matadors and Aspens, but you get the idea of what I'm talking about. The personal luxury car starting to take the place of the muscle car. That's what happens when the party's over, I guess, eh? Anyway, I think you get the idea. Paul saying, I think the drive torque is set up to 900 foot-pounds. Is that okay for the 309? Oh, yeah. Dude, listen, you got guys like Paul Moody out there with his Bravo package. That car is, you know, 1,000 horsepower, E85 upper and lower pulley car. Trust me, you're just fine with that setup. Plenty of cars running. Well, you got to remember, I mean, there's plenty of cars running super deep into the nines with those 309 gears. So don't worry about them one bit. Go74 saying, good night, B. Thanks again for getting us to not worry about the virus and getting us talking about cars again. Absolutely, man. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's more fun talking about fun stuff, right? For sure. Catalyst99 saying, will the Super B ever come back, or has the Scat Pack become its replacement? You know, the Super B, you got to remember what the B stands for. The B stands for B-body. So Belvedere, which would bleed into Roadrunner, Coronet, Savoy, I guess, but Savoy's before the designation. Anyway, you get the idea. Coronet, Belvedere, and Roadrunner, that would be your B-body cars. And so Super B just meant the top of the line B-body. Just so happened it, you know, play on words and all that. Scat Pack had the B, you know, so... but yeah, the Scat Pack, unless they ever come out with another true B-body style car, Scat Pack will take the place of it. But you got to remember, I mean, these modern cars are the size, I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, it's the size of a B-body, but it's got the styling of an E-body. That's the modern car. You kind of get them both wrapped up into one, you know, love child style. So for that, Mopar, good job. Got to say, you know, I kind of got my Roadrunner and I got my Challenger all kind of wrapped up into one car. Gotta love that. So I don't see the Super B ever really making a comeback, at least not like it was back then. Poppy Eat saying, good stuff, man. Sounds like you have a PhD in cars. It just proves that I should have found a girlfriend at some point long ago. I have a very understanding wife, though. I don't think I can be married to anybody else. In fact, I know for a fact I couldn't be married to anybody else. She's the only one that will put up with my dumb fuckery when it comes to this car stuff. Raul Ramirez saying, on the latest platform of engines that Dodge and Ford has come out with, for you, who has made the best performance machines overall, 6.2 Hellcat versus 5.2 Voodoo Predator? Let's see. For you, who has made the best performance machines overall? 6.2 Hellcat. 6.2 Hellcat, hands down in that. When we talk about best performance machines, what we have to understand is practical performance standards. The Voodoo, in my opinion, and guys, listen, if I had a GT350, I would build a GT350 that you would absolutely froth over to drive. And it would be naturally aspirated, bone stock, wouldn't touch the engine other than a tune, and put a set of 430 gears, at minimum a set of 410 gears in it, turn you loose, you would come back, you would look like the freaking Cheshire Cat, the grin that you would have on your face. Love that engine, but it is only fun when you are doing illegal things with it, quite frankly. I don't have any experience with the GT500, but I can tell you that I've got plenty of experience with fast, positive displacement supercharged cars. I can tell you that the GT500 is going to be right on par with all of those, with its only downside being that it is a DSG transmission. It's just not going to launch. It's not going to have the visceral driving experience that a Hellcat will have per se. It's just going to miss that torque converter feel. And the problem with the torque converter feel is that it is impossible to replicate with a DSG, for better or for worse. But from an overall wealth of background and wealth of goodwill, the 6.2 is kind of already there, bro. I mean, look, you take this, for example, there are so many of these Hellcat variants running around out there that are getting just wailed on regularly, and they get bored asking for more. You keep these things fed with enough 91 and 93 octane, keep the oil changed, they just flat out don't care. There haven't been any durability questions or concerns with these Mopars. For the Hellcats, there just hasn't been. Keeping in mind that, you know, when you're in and around this lifestyle and you're in and around shops all the time, you are only going to see failures. You know, if you're out fixing them, that's your business, then you're going to see those failures. When it came to Hellcats, you just didn't see the failures that you would see with 6.4s or 5.7s. The Hellcats only blew up when you, well, frankly, got greedy with them. So it was just rare to actually hurt one. So in that respect, the Ford's got a lot of ground. I'm not saying that it can't, but it has got such an uphill battle just in sheer numbers alone. You know, from a technical standpoint, it's probably technically better, but technically better doesn't mean better overall. Yeah, the technical aspect is just a small portion of it. In other words, it's like saying which is better, the Coyote or the 6.4. Well, from a technical standpoint, the Coyote is, but the 6.4 offers a driving experience that the Coyote just cannot compete with. Not naturally aspirated form, certainly. So that's kind of how I see the 6.2 versus the 5.2. And no matter what, I think the 5.2 is just going to fall short of the 6.2 just based on the fun factor alone of just the platform that it's in. And again, it's so difficult to talk about the engine without discussing the platform that it's installed in. And that leads me to another point. Look at how versatile the 6.2 has proven to be. I mean, you got the Challenger, Charger, the Jeep. You've got the Demon, the Red Eye. You've got soon to be the TRX, the truck. Is there the Durango? I think is going to get a piece of that. Is there anything that the 6.2 can't power? And you're not going to see anything like that come from the Predator. So, again, I mean, look at the viability of the platform as a whole, and you can allow that, if you want to look at it like this, you can allow that market to dictate which one is better too. So, HU37 saying, what makes cars expensive are all the safety features, airbags, ABS, etc., and building more reliable vehicles, computer controls, fuel injection. Many cars back in the day were also rust buckets. There is a lot of that. All of that is true, very true. And again, they were run out as, you know, general playthings. To be honest with you, they weren't even expected to last 10 years. I mean, realistically, they were designed to last just long enough for the owner to trade it in on the next, you know, the 2 years to 3 years that it would take to get that owner back into the dealership. For it to last any longer than that was a minor miracle. Not without significant mechanical and structural upgrades or maintenance and upkeep. And you're right. A lot of them were maintenance nightmares because older cars back then didn't have the rust protection that they do now. So, several problems. Callus and I said, how did you learn so much about cars? Did you go to car technical college? No, I grew up around a lot of mechanics. I grew up around a lot of street racers. My dad was big into racing, street racing, cars and motorcycles. Family was in it. I kind of grew up around it. My grandfather raced NASCAR before NASCAR was called NASCAR. He raced stock cars. From there, it was working at a shop, lots of studying. I got heavily, as a kid, I got heavily into camshaft design theory, engine design theory. Just math was another thing that came real easy because I could associate everything with a car part, especially geometry. So I just kind of got into it. I nerded out with it. And just the same way that you would get into anything. I mean, if you're into, pick something. If you get into it, you're going to get excited about it. If you're excited about it, you want to learn more about it. And the more you learn about it, the more you learn that you don't know about it. So you start getting more excited about the stuff that you don't know. And then you hear about other things and it just kind of, you know, snowballs into everything else. So, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And then another part of it, I just got into engine theory in general and loved the World War II stuff. So anyway, when I was living in California, I was actually a docent at the Hiller Aviation Museum, which is a civil aviation museum. But I was the engine specialist because of my background in engines and racing and all this other stuff that I'd done leading up to that point. It was fun, being able to, get some, behind the scenes playtime with some of those old Warhorse engines. They're a lot of fun, especially the Merlins. And my favorite were the Hall Scott engines because they're huge Hemi inline 4 and 6 engines. 5-inch bore and 8-inch stroke, 7-inch stroke engines. Pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, that's how I got into it. Didn't ever go to school for it. I just was around people that did this all the time and was handed wrenches and told to do things as a kid. Let's see. Speed Freak saying, what do you think would be the faster daily, a Jeep SRT or one of those NA F-150 trucks set up like a Lightning? Well, if you're talking about NA stuff, I think the Jeep would actually be a little bit quicker off the line, but the F-150 might walk around it depending on how it's geared. But either way, it'd be a pretty fun daily no matter what. But faster, I'd say it's a wash really at that point between the two. Give it to the Jeep out of the hole though. Either way it goes, the Jeep's going to cover it out of the hole, no doubt about it. Ken's asking, does Miss Revlon have a ceramic finish? No, she does not. She is rocking the Mother's Spray Detailer. In fact, I've got to hit it probably tomorrow morning. I'm going to be getting her detail. I just washed it today and gave her a little bit of a spa day and need to hit her with a little bit of shine so she shines up nice. Xcash is saying that Voodoo is something else. Perfect track engine. It's a perfect track engine, provided you don't try to over rev it. There's been some people have some problems with them. And again, man, you just don't see as many on closed circuit tracks. Not like you see LS's, but they're great engines. That's the thing. They're great engines. And I'll tell you something else. GT350, the Mustangs in general, I'm telling you, it's almost like they were tailored specifically to my measurements. Talk about ergonomics out of this world on those cars, but again, they're only fun when you are seriously breaking your right foot off in them. Let's see. Paul Christoph saying, I may have an extra GoPro Hero 4 Black. Where can I get it to you? Hit me up on a DM. We can talk about that. I need to get one for sure. So yeah, if you got one you want to get rid of, let me know. Hit me up on the DM on this. I think you can still DM on YouTube. If not, hit me up on Instagram. It is BA Mason 721 on Instagram. Bravo Alpha Mason 721 on Instagram. Cuda Man is saying, I need a Hellcat. Yes, you do, my friend. I would suggest it highly. William Harmon is saying, do you think Dodge will ever make an honest attempt at a mid-engine sports car like GM and Ford? Well, they kind of did. It was the 400 LP or something like that. It was actually a very viable concept car, and I don't know why it ever got shut down. I'm sure somebody can tell me. But they shut it down either way. And would they ever try to make one? Look, between me and you, I hope they don't. And between me and you, I hope they do bring back the Viper in the way that the Viper should have been introduced to the world 20 years ago. But 25. Anyway, what they really need to do is get their act right on the Viper, reintroduce it with the V8, have an automatic, true automatic ZF HP90. Don't screw this up, Dodge. Or a manual, and make it basically what the C7 would have evolved into. That would be what I would do. Don't worry about the mid-engine stuff. It's exotic, it's neat, whatever, but let's stick with what we know best and refine that Viper and have it be the Viper that it really needs to be. And I think at that point it'll be economically viable and attractive across a much wider income demographic. Kind of like the Corvette was. That's my hope anyway. I know that that's what they were working towards, but I just don't know if they shelved the project. I haven't heard anything lately. And it's been since, let me look, since Mecum of 2016, since I had that conversation. So it's been a little bit. Robert Boulay saying, B Mopar, what's up, brother? What's up, Robert? So, yeah, speaking of the Viper, so you guys know my history with Vipers. I've had a few of them. I kind of miss them, but I don't know that I would ever own another one unless it was basically some type of a Hellcat variant, ZF automatic, something that would be a little bit lighter than an LX platform, but still be able to get out there and, you know, have the comfort and the amenities of one of these newer cars, but just be a little bit lighter weight. That's really what I would hope that that Viper would evolve into. I don't know. I get the whole Viper thing kind of tugs at my heartstrings because I am kind of tied to those cars and have had the opportunity to have them on drag strips. We used to do a lot of high speed, just dumb stuff with those cars. Closed circuit track, especially down here at the Blint base, a lot of that. So I'd love to see him bring it back, but just not with the V10. Neat history behind the V10, by the way. The guy that developed it, I cannot remember the guy's name. Anyway, look at the specs of that old V10, the 8-liter, and then look at the specs of the Pontiac 383. Might see some similarities there. Let's see. Xcash, if they can undercut the Vet by making the Viper cheaper, well, that's the idea. You know, right now the Corvette has got a bit of an Achilles heel. So let's talk about the Vet for a minute. The Vet base model, $60,000. Yeah, okay. Show me one of those cars. Is there even one of those floating around anywhere? And there's not. Okay, so typically the walking around price on a Corvette is around $80,000. Shouldn't be too hard to build a Hemi-powered aluminum block, 550 horsepower or 525 horsepower NA, or even 500 horsepower NA, doesn't matter. 6.4 liter, aluminum block 6.2 liter. Get out there and just rule the roost on the drag strip. Have a ball around a road course. True manual transmission, true automatic transmission. Get out there and just have a fun-ass sports car. One that is not pretentious with a DSG transmission and a nice little engine sitting right on its ass neck. Not really my type of car, Corvette, but that Viper sure would be. And I would be at the top of the list to pick up one of those. I got to get a second job. That's not a problem. But we're going to have to put a little something next to Little Miss Revlon if they ever decide to release a car like that. I'll take mine in that new Frostbite blue, please. Robert's saying, let's talk early 70 E-body, Mopar, Cuda, or Challenger, and why? I'd probably... Close your ears, sweetheart. I'd probably take the Cuda. Only because that was the first one that I remember. It's a little bit on the smaller side than the Challenger. It's a little bit shorter. But I love the Challenger too. Really, for me, I'd take either one. Cuda's a little bit smaller, so maybe the Cuda, 440 Cuda, 440 Challenger would be right up my alley. Hemi, maybe. I've actually driven Hemi B-bodies, and the stock factory hydraulic lifter 426 Hemi, to write home about. A little bit doggy down low. Real strong through upper and mid-range, though. But, basically where the 440 signs off, that's right where the Hemi starts coming online at about 4,700, 5,000 RPM, right around in there. So, Ferocious 1980, I love the name. Saying I'm late, but it's a rumor when all the dust settles, new Hellcats will go for 40 grand. Um, maybe for a base model with a manual, I don't know, man. That would be a tough number to get to, all things considered. Raul Ramirez saying, talking about the 6.2 can power basically anything by Dodge. I think Ford can do that with the Predator easily, with no doubt, but they don't want to. No, they're not going to. That engine's too expensive to build, by the way. 6.2 on a stand's pretty easy. The newer engine just takes longer. The Predator just takes longer to build. There's more cost involved with it. Kevin Collins saying, hey, Mason, what do you think about a Hellcat version Jeep Rubicon? I think it would be a game over run for Mopar. Texas something 4x4 does a lot of repowers on Jeeps here in Houston. I think let me think about this. I think they're still doing them. We had tuned a Hellcat powered Jeep, and this is with different axles, an 8-speed automatic Jeep, 8-speed automatic with a 6.2 in the Jeep. Also did a lot of LS swaps and 6.4 swaps into those things. The Hellcat swap Jeep was pretty freaking sick. I think it made, with the big ass tires and everything else, it made like 530 horsepower to the rear wheels, which turning that much weight is ridiculous. I mean, it's making a shitload of power. But it was pretty racy, a 4-door Jeep, pretty badass. But a bit much, all things considered. But definitely, in terms of being just a sideshow freaking novelty, it was pretty damn cool. Truck ran good too. Let's see. Raul Ramirez saying, I think the reason why Ford hasn't come up with a 5.0 truck or SUV is because they don't want to damage their sales with the Mustang. I mean, they've got the truck. I mean, there's plenty of 5-liter trucks running around. They have the Roush version of that truck with the Roush supercharged F-150. I mean, they do really well. 650 horsepower, 675 horsepower, I believe. Now it's a Roush tune, which means that 650 or 675 horsepower is only available for like 5 seconds out of the day, with as many nannies as are associated with it. But they're certainly out there. I think it would be great if they did re-release something like the Lightning, though. I think that they're really missing the boat. I think that GT500 engine needs to find its way into a single cab F-150 with a 10-speed automatic. That would get my attention directly. So, come on, Ford. Zephyr R&D saying, Professor Mason, I understand wanting to price a new Viper in $60,000 would, but I would hate to see quality of that car in a 2020 plus world. Well, I'll tell you this, there's enough marginal utility in the Hellcat platform to be able to transfer or to defer the cost of the Hellcat platform into a new Viper platform. In other words, you've already done all the research, you already know, you've got all the certification, the power is already a known thing, and the car is just a platform to put the thing into. Aside from tooling, there's not going to be a whole lot of extra cost involved in NVH, powertrain type stuff. You're not going to see quality suffer, and I think that it can be done significantly less than $60,000. I think an NA Viper realistically can come in, with a 6.4 around the $50,000 mark. Go head to head with the Supra. So that's where I would be looking. And it's doable. It's completely doable. In fact, it's easily doable considering all the things you don't have to do to get you there. So anyway, just food for thought, if nothing else. Especially when you start to, run the thought process back as far as just how little they would have to do to get that thing ushered through. My only question is, would the car be viable in the marketplace? And I think it would be. I think that there's a hole there. I think that there's a niche there that they can fill with the Viper. And I think that it's a permanent niche that they can fill. I don't see Corvette going back to front engine anytime soon, if ever. And you want to be, I guess the best way I could put it is you want to be inviting for all drivers. The problem with the old Viper is that it was not at all an inviting car. It was sketchy, and that's putting it politely. The first Vipers were terrible about oversteer, and so they engineered understeer into the car. Well, for a car that is actually a little bit rear weight biased, the car was terrible at understeer once they redesigned it for the Gen 2. Had a lot of them slide into curves. So the issue is you need to make a car that is the old Corvette for today. And I hate to say it, but the Viper, if it took over that mantle, would be the only one out there doing it. A traditional front engine rear drive hot rod, in that respect, I think would do very well. And like I say, I'd be on board with bells on at that point. And again, I'd like mine in Frostbite Blue or Redline Red. Let's see. Lola, what are you talking about, dude? Jalen is saying, what times can you expect in the quarter mile forging a 392 to a 426 stroker with headers and a cam? About the same as a stock 392 car on a good drag pack. I mean, you put them both on a tire. Give you an idea. Put them both on a tire. I'll tell you what. Let's put them both on the dyno. The best I have seen out of an honest-to-goodness 426 has been 526 horsepower. I think was the number. It's 526 or somewhere in the 520s. This is on a Mustang dyno, on a dyno that most, was it 526? No, I'm sorry, it was 476. 526, just for a minute, that was the average number for bone stock pro-charged D1. 476 versus a typical 392, which would put down stock with a tune, say 420. So it was about 50 solid horsepower better, all things considered, for a nice solid streetable 426. It's not a huge departure. I would say that on a drag pack in the exact same car, you're looking at about maybe 3.5 to 4/10 of an improvement. My 392 went consistent high 1130s, low 1140s, full weight on a 20-inch setup. And that's full weight, 20-inch setup with a Mopar rear seat. No, it did not have a Mopar rear seat delete at that time. So, taking that into account, you would say 1080s on a drag pack, maybe 1070s, but that's about it. The problem is the cost that it's going to take to get you to that point. Now, if you've been able to get your hands on a scat pack on the cheap, then it might be a pretty good trade. I mean, think of it like this. Let's say you picked up a used scat pack core for $25,000. You've got $13,000 or $14,000 to throw at the car. It might be a viable solution. The problem is if you take $25,000, throw $13,000 or $14,000 on it, now you're sitting at damn near $40,000, and you're getting dangerously close to encroaching on Hellcat territory at that point. And I've already proven that a bone stock Hellcat on accident will go 10s. Throw a 309 gear in it and a drag pack, and without even tuning it, you're going to be at 1060s in the heat, 1050s, 1040s in good weather. I guess the point is that you're going to walk away from that 426. It's just the way that it is. So at that point, it's a money game. Now, if you just want to build just a stout naturally aspirated package, that's a pretty cool project, a pretty neat endeavor. And I would never try to talk anybody out of it. I just am here to give you the real talk about what you're going to be up against should you choose to, go sniping after one of these Hellcats. And the problem is that once you start dialing up a 426, traction is going to be an issue, same way it is with one of these Hellcats. But I'll give you an idea. If you want to know what a strong running, not full race setup, I mean, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about a good, solid street package, 426 or a 440. Get in a Hellcat and put it in 500 horse mode. Oh, we're back. Get in a Hellcat, put it in 500 horse mode. That will basically give you a roundabout idea of what a 426 runs like. Good torque down low, not a ton of horsepower up top, but that's really more intake manifold limited than anything else. Switch to the Edelbrock intake manifold and you can get a little bit more mid-range out of it. Switch to the Holley and you can get more top end power, but you will sacrifice power down low, and that's where you need all the help you can get, even with the extra displacement, about dragging one of these cars out of the hole. So from a roll, it might do fairly well, but here's the other problem you're going to run into. You're going to want to spin that 426 to really get the most advantage out of the cylinder heads. So it becomes this, basically it's like a snake eating itself. You're spending all this money on an NA combination because you want an NA combination. Let me rephrase that. You want a fast NA combination. The problem is that no matter what, you've got this dragon that you got to chase. So they'll always ask, well, how does it run compared to a Hellcat? So then you got to answer that question. You want to keep answering that question, or you just want to get a Hellcat? That's, I guess, a different question now. Lola's saying, what has to go, muscle cars or sports cars? Man, sports cars. Muscle cars are just more fun. Plus, they're more comfy. Robert's saying, just picked up a 13 Roush Stage 3 bone stock. Nice car, by the way. 14,000 miles from original owner. Still has its original tires. Not for long, right? Roush puts a soft-ass tune on these cars due to the warranty they offered new. Yes, they do. I need to open it. Here's the thing. You're better off wiping that computer clean and starting all over with a bass tune. The Roush tunes are a bitch to pick apart. I think VMP has got that figured out, but all I can say is, yeah, that tune is crazy soft from the factory. I mean, it's got so many nannies built into it, it'd blow your mind. Oh, cool question. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. Lola's saying, what has to go, Skinner, Zeppelin, or Grand Funk? Damn, that's a hard one. Like me some Skinner. Zeppelin. Zeppelin's going to fall in the middle. So I'm going to say keep Skinner, keep Grand Funk, Zeppelin, get in the boot. Callus99, do you like Ford's new Z351 aluminum block, or do you like the older 351 Cleveland? Z351 all the way. One has to go. Lola's saying, what has to go? Mohawks, mullets, or man buns? Dude, seriously, with the man buns? No, you don't man bun. It's if you have to predicate a hairstyle with man, then it's already bad, because it insinuates a complete departure from the feminine, which is exactly what a bun is. I mean, look, unless you're a samurai, you don't need to be having no man bun. And I don't know any samurais, so yeah, ditch the man bun. Faux show. Raul saying, could the Viper come back with this new market with the ZR1s, Hellcats, and GT5? Yeah, GT500s, absolutely. Actually, I think it would come back and it would do better than you think, especially if you had an aluminum block. The aluminum block is what's going to be key to the discussion here, but keep the balance of the car right. And see, that's the issue that you're going to be up against. The problem with Mopars, Vipers in particular, is that they're not very well balanced platforms. Lots of tip-in torque, a little bit too much, a little bit over the top. Over the top is great when you want to go in a straight line, but if you want the thing to go around corners and things like that, you've got to have a balanced approach to power, traction, and turn in. That's where the Viper can really shine, especially when you consider the fact that it'd be coming in. I mean, you don't even have to change the platform that it came from. You can take the Gen 5 or Gen whatever platform, make it accommodate a V8 and an automatic transmission, and you're done. You're done. You've already got all the stuff done that you need to get done, and it's already ready to go. Mopar, please listen to me. Do this. You'll be so much happier in the future. This is a legacy thing, and I think that they could really pull it off, and it would be a fantastic, fantastic car. Lola J saying, one has to go, The Godfather or Goodfellas? I'll tell you what. Which Godfather? You got to determine which Godfather. For right now, I'm going to say Goodfellas has to take a hike, because if it weren't for The Godfather, you wouldn't have movies like Goodfellas. But I'm talking about the first one, or maybe the second one. The later one, not so much. Zephyr saying, you're breaking my heart. I recently rode shotgun in a last gen ACRX. The raw brute of that thing was something I haven't experienced. I would hope that it would be more of a US GT3 RS. Yeah, I know it, man. I miss the ACR. Jay Hillenberger is saying, hey B, I'm thinking about a used Hellcat Challenger. Do the first built 2015 to 16 models have issues? Yes, they do. The later 2015 into the 2016 Hellcats had issues with their supercharger snout bearings. It's just a bad run of bearings. Here's the problem though. A lot of them are still very low mileage and they haven't run into the problem yet. My car is an early Hellcat. It's one of the first run Hellcats. In fact, my car was built in November of 2014. So I am before the run of bad bearings. I want to say that the run of bad bearings was cars built like in February or March, maybe even as late as April or May, because it falls into that June, July, August, September into the 26 model year. But that's the only issues that they've got. Aside from that, super robust. The only issue that the Hellcats have that is common to all of the Dodges is the glitchiness of the U-Connect. But aside from that, mechanically, they are very, very robust. Lola, one has to go. Moonshine or tequila? Last one of these that I can get into, buddy, and it's going to be moonshine. Tequila makes your clothes fall off. We're going to stick with that. See, Eric saying $32,000 US, 2017 SRT plus Maggie 23 supercharged. That's actually a pretty good deal. Arthur Wall saying, B. Mason, there's a guy on YouTube named Sneaky Snake with a final gen Viper cam with 650 plus wheel horsepower. He leaves Z06s and McLaren 720s behind. There's a couple of Vipers that do pretty good, but you're be hard pressed to really catch a 720 off guard with that car. Lots of torque though. I will say that there's something to be said for the Vipers when it comes to modability. This is another thing, man. God, Mopar killing me with this. So when you start to depart from the norm with your flagship sports car, you lose support from, it's another reason for the aftermarket to just not support your brand in general. And it's one of the reasons why I've kind of felt that the aftermarket didn't really take to Mopar, is that the Viper represents something wholly different from a powertrain standpoint. Could you imagine if the Viper had a Hemi platform that aftermarket would have just clamored all over it because it shared platform synergy across lines, truck, car, sedan, SUV, Viper? one part works for all of these things, not just for one car. And that's, again, where the Corvettes kick everybody's ass, because they do product integration like nobody's business. Aftermarket loves that. They need that because it helps with economies of scale. Oh, Lola, this is the last one I can do, bro, but one has to go Fruity Pebbles, Tricks, or Fruit Loops. Tricks taste like rabbit shit, okay? Tricks is disgusting. No, that goes, period. Fruit Loops will destroy the inside of your mouth. Fruity Pebbles, pretty good. Not Cocoa Pebbles, because Cocoa Pebbles are the shit. Fruity Pebbles still pretty good, though. Small doses, but Tricks are disgusting. X-Cash, I don't eat any of those. Honey Bunches of Oats for me. Honey Bunches of Oats are sweeter and healthier. Lola's saying, keep Skinner and Grand Fuck. Hell yeah. Let's see. Kevin Collins. Hey, what are your opinions on the auto stick manual mode for the NAG 1? I honestly think it's the only way for them, I guess, is what he's trying to say, and makes the car a riot for what it is. They're fun, man. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my favorite all-time vehicle at the shop that we tune, in fact, I still have the tune for it, is that TTS 62 D100 with the 6.1 and the NAG 1. Yeah, that truck was great. 373 gear, stock 6.1. I mean, the thing fried the tires. So a lot of fun, great truck. You'll see it pop up on Instagram every once in a while. When you see that silver 62 D100, that's the one that I'm talking about. That's the only vehicle, one of 2 or 3 of the only vehicles that I was ever bummed out when it left. I was happy that I got a chance to experience that vehicle, but I was bummed out when it left because I really like that truck. Robert's saying, purchasing a set of 1 7/8" headers, bigger CAI and VMP twin blade throttle body, BAP on pump gas for now should be a lot of fun. Then we'll do fuel system and a smaller pulley at safe point. Thanks for the advice. Absolutely. Not a big fan of the booster pump, but in your case, I think it'll work fine. Crazy SRT8, I like your thoughts about the B-body together with the LX Challenger. It's really interesting concept, especially since my first car was a 68 Charger and currently building an SRT8. Very cool. Thank you. Oh, Lola J saying the first Godfather. Yeah, you got to keep the first Godfather then. Yeah, if it weren't for the first Godfather, there wouldn't be a Goodfellas or a Casino for that matter. Christian McVeigh saying, hey B, hope y'all are safe and healthy. Don't know if this has been covered yet, but do you think COVID will have an effect on sports car production? I hope these things still stick around. It'll just slow it down a little bit. I mean, there'll be a 1 year, maybe a 2 year market correction, but that'll be about it. I mean, the demand is still going to be there. Don Powers saying, hello, Mr. Mason. What's up, Mr. Powers? Hope things are going well. I was saying Tricks goes, not sweet enough. Tricks is terrible. Go 74. What if Dodge made a mid-engine Viper? Wouldn't be up my alley, man. It just would not be my thing. The only way I would be on board with a mid-engine Viper is if it were all-wheel drive. Zephyr R&D saying, how do I buy that 6.1 NAG 1 tune from you? There's really nothing to it, to be honest with you. It's got a couple of degrees more timing in it. For that truck, I think it had long tubes, like a MagnaFlow type muffler. I mean, there's really not the tune really isn't a tune. It's just throwing a little bit more timing at it. Pump gas. The truck was light though, and that's part of the thing. I think that truck made you gotta remember it's a 6.1 NAG 1, so they don't make a lot of power to the rear wheels. It just doesn't translate the way that the 8-speed does. But the 6.1 in that thing, I think it put down 370 horse to the rear wheels or something like that when we got done with it. Stock cam. Basically, it's super easy. Just take a stock cam profile, basically under wide open throttle. Give it about 2 degrees more timing, numb knock sensors. 2 degrees more timing, set fuel. Basically, you're going to want like an divided by 6. So you want about a 12.3, 12.4 AFR. That's it. Pretty much garden variety hot rod too. Greg Fish saying, have you seen 6-speed Hellcats at the track running the 10s? Not stock, no. Not stock, although that's mainly because nobody really takes them seriously. And I don't want it to sound like that. The problem with the 10-speed Hellcats is that first gear is extremely long, and it's mainly because the TR6060 and that torque capacity basically puts you at like 60 or 62 miles an hour in first gear. Just real doggy out of the hole. So, but that's why nobody really takes them that seriously. If they want to go drag racing, they get the automatic and just let her eat. Robert's asking about my thoughts on the high flow cats on boosted cars and the 600-700 horsepower wheel range. I want to reap the benefits of no cats, but the loudness factor weighs in heavily on me. Let me give you just my own experience. My car, right here, made 666 rear wheel horsepower with the factory catalytic converters installed on the car. Catalytic converters are fine. They do not really represent any honest to goodness restriction, especially metal substrate cats. I wouldn't think that there'd be any real restriction up to, say, 750 wheel horsepower on a Mustang dyno, which is to say somewhere around 800 horsepower on a dyno jet. Modern catalytic converters are really good, and a positive displacement engine, they don't really care about the cats being back there. I'll even tell you this. So when we had pulled the cats off of, so there's 3 of us are pretty much at the drag strip every day that the drag strip is open. We had pulled the cats off of a couple of the cars, ran them at the drag strip untuned, one of them with the tune to not have catalytic converters on the car. Both of those cars slowed down when the cats were taken off of them. When the cats were put back on them, they picked back up. This is not density altitude related. This is specifically a component related thing. I mean, we're talking one weekend versus the very next weekend. Because again, when I say we're at the drag strip every day that it's open, I mean every day that it's open. And the cars lost about 1/10 of a second. So, and this is in various stages of tune. One of them was at the time a tuned Hellcat stock boost. The other one was stock, obviously stock boost. So, and not only does it not really benefit you to take them off, but you're not going to gain anything by taking them off, and that's kind of the way that it works out. So, I'd say go with a set of metal substrates and let it ride. Let's see. Go74 saying, I think Dodge should make the Charger Hellcat all-wheel drive, keep the Challenger rear-wheel drive, but do something different for the Charger. I would agree with you. Something would be cool along those lines. Maybe there's some more room in the platform for the Charger. I don't know, but I'm kind of with you on that. I need to see something new and cool. The TRX is kind of neat, assuming that thing does finally get greenlit for production. I know that, well, my understanding, let me rephrase that. My understanding is it has been greenlit for production. I just don't know when yet. But yeah, I'd like to see something cool or new for the sedan side. But you got to remember that Dodge is the only company making a hot rod sedan in the United States. I mean, to get any competition, you got to go to the 550 or the E-Class out of Mercedes and basically BMW/Germany. Kevin Collins saying the reason I asked about the NAG 1 auto stick is because I swear I can shift faster than the NAG 1. They can be a little bit sloppy without a tune. William Harmon saying, what changes do you see coming down the line for the Hellcats and Scats in the future? Well, in 2023, the contract is up for the LX/LC platform between FCA and Mercedes-Benz. That will probably be re-upped, and my understanding is that they were going to re-engineer the LX platform. Basically, revamp the LX platform, make it a little bit lighter. But aside from that, I'm not seeing too many real changes. There was some talk about smaller version. There's a lot of talk about a lot of things, but here's the thing. The market is trending more towards the larger, bigger body Mopars remaining unchanged. The market likes that. Let me tell you what the market doesn't like. The market doesn't like Camaro. Anything in between the two bookends of Mustang and Mopar are really not getting a whole lot of love. So just take that with a grain of salt, but there was some initial talk about, the Giulia platform. Then there was the Ghibli platform. Both of those coming out of one Alfa Romeo, one Maserati. Then there was, okay, well, that ain't going to happen. What can we do with the LX/LC platform to make it a continuously viable platform moving forward? And that would mean revamping, making it a little bit lighter, smaller, whatever. I don't know that the market is going to be super cool with that. I think that they're going to more or less keep things unchanged with some cosmetic changes along the way. But I would not be looking for a wholesale platform change anytime soon. Let's see. Zephyr's asking, any experience or knowledge on the RIP/Vortex setup for the 3.6 Jeeps? No, none. The only thing that we really messed with was, what the hell was it? It wasn't even our install. It was a tune on a root style supercharger on a 3.6. Anyway, no, not really. Honestly, more experience, and it wasn't me doing the tuning, it was Alex doing the tuning, but data logging and chasing issues with LS swapped Jeeps with Magnuson superchargers and Hellcat swapped Jeeps. So sorry I can't help you on that one, brother. Steven's asking, best Challenger under 30 grand, thinking either RT Scat Pack or 392 SRT8. For me, RT Scat Pack. The older 392 SRT8s are pretty cool, but only in manual. I wouldn't mess with anything that is not an 8-speed automatic. Jerry 1320, what's up with the rumored Ghoul charger? Fact or fiction? Probably fiction at this point. Not economically viable. Go 74, to change gear ratios, you just change the pinion gear and ring gear, or do you do something else? It depends on the platform that you're talking about. For the older NAG1 Gate-Rag rear ends, I believe those are serviceable, and I think Motive even makes gears for those. For the ZF rear end, those are non-serviceable, meaning that there is not a ring and pinion sold for that diff through any manufacturer. I'm not really sure of all the reasons why, but unfortunately that's just kind of the way that it is. So to answer your question, correct, yes. However, no in certain circumstances. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Damn, we're coming up to it 2 hours and 30 minutes. So I'm going to get through who we got here, and then I got to check out, guys. Christian McVeigh saying the current Camaro is a sad story. Unfortunately, I have to agree with you. Basically, unrecognizable as Camaro at this point. It's like they're too scared to change the design. It has become warped and blooded. Z01 is a beast, though. Yeah. Here's my problem with the Camaro, and I hang my head in sadness because of this, because I love Camaros. I truly do. And I know that they're easy to pick on, but the problem is they have tried to be everything to everyone, and they can't be. Not in this market. Let me give you an example. The Mustang is amazing at doing Mustang things. High revving, not a lot of torque. You can throw gearing at it. Very responsive. Lots of fun. Very versatile platform. 392 does everything well in a big body package. Super comfy. A Luxo barge that you can run 11s with bone stock on a tire in great air. But then there's the Camaro. It's not torquey or snappy like a 6.4 liter. It's not as ergonomically satisfying to drive as the Mustang. It doesn't have a visual sex appeal that the Mustang or the Challenger does, especially the Mustang when it's set up the right way. It's just not in a good place. And the way that I describe it is, if you have bookends, Mustang, Challenger, for the Camaro, because it's in the middle, it has to be better at the Challenger at being torquey, or the 6.4 really, I should say. It has to be better than that engine at being torquey, snappy, and responsive to drive, and act like a big block. The 6.2 doesn't do that, so the arrow goes down. It might be nimble, and it might do a whole lot of things interesting, but it doesn't have the ergonomic prowess and the comfort factor and the familiarity factor that the Mustang does. It doesn't really have the look, and it doesn't have the overall wide appeal that the Camaro or that the Mustang does. So that arrow keeps going down. In other words, it's less than the Mustang and less than the Challenger at something, and that's why it's getting, you know, just it's not doing as well in the marketplace as maybe they hoped that it would. There's areas that they can improve upon it, but I just don't ever see that truly being the case, and that's why Camaro might be exiting stage left again, and that's a real bummer for all of us in the community. But everybody seems to forget about it. And as far as the ZL1 goes, look guys, I don't know really where the ZL1 fits in all of this. I really like ZL1s though. They have the automatic transmission. It's a real automatic. They've got a manual transmission, and it's a real manual. I think if I were in the business of buying either a GT500 or a ZL1, I would be hard pressed to overlook the ZL1 for everything I could do. I mean, you'd be buying the car on potential, not on actual performance as stock, as delivered, in other words. But you see them at the drag strip, and even with a little bit of work, it's, well, bone stock, they're running like 1120, 1130, where at Hellcat, which is a heavier car, albeit making more power, but still, it's a 10-second car. They're just behind the Hellcat. So again, I need the ZL1 to be faster, and it's not. So anyway, strange feelings about the Camaro, because the facts just don't fall in line with my fantasy about that car. So, you know, you're buying more fantasy than anything else. Robert's saying, being an old school Mopar guy myself, I'm hoping FCA installs the aluminum 426 and NA form in the Scat Pack lineup. It'd be nice if they could, but we'll see one day maybe. Go74 saying it does. Dim Boy's running. What is the best camshaft for an LSWS6? Damn, man. So where do you start? Depends on what you want to do with the car. So what do you want to do with the car? But I would say something around, you know, 230 intake, 236, 234 exhaust, maybe 228 intake. I would go with an FAST intake with a 90 millimeter throttle body, because you really don't need any more than that. Long tubes. On the cam, intake center line, look for something around 109-ish. Low separation angle of around 113, give or take, on that, 228, 232, 228, 236 grind cam. That'll put you about where you need to be. There's so many grinds that are going to look like that. So really all you got to do is pick one. But again, it just depends on what all you're going to do with that car long term. Kevin Collins, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the contribution to the cause. He's asking, how would you rank used 392s mechanically? Very highly, as a matter of fact. 392, when they're maintained properly, is a very stout platform. Main thing to look out for is, maintenance records, really. I mean, I never really had any real problems with 392s along the way. I mean, again, when you work at a shop, you're going to see the stuff that fails, so you always have to take that with a grain of salt. I mean, when you work at a shop, the stuff that never breaks about once a month. The stuff that rarely breaks about once every 2 to 3 weeks. The stuff that you hear a lot about could be overhyped, and you only hear about stuff that is in that category breaking once a month or once every 3 weeks. So, but 392s are great as long as they're maintained. They're actually pretty robust engines. And as a matter of fact, I've seen them with well over 100,000 miles at the drag strip with guys spraying them with 125 shots. So go figure. But again, keep them maintained, not too shabby. And then Go 74 saying it depends on what you want out of your LS. Yeah, and that's kind of my thing too. But then boys, here's my suggestion. I mean, you've got to look at it from an entire platform. You can't just look at the cam itself. I would say BTR 650 springs, push rods, something again in that 230-ish range on the intake side, 236-ish on the exhaust side. You're going to need to cam that thing a little bit, but with that fast intake and a 90mm throttle body, you'll be sitting in real good shape, and you'll have plenty of hood clearance, I think, at that point too. So anyway, hope that helps out. But Go 74 is saying good night again, B. No kidding, right? So guys, I'm going to check out. We are at 2 hours and 40 minutes. We had a really good time tonight. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and you guys stay safe out there. Keep practicing your social distancing, keep doing your thing, and we'll all get through this together. And until then, that's a wrap on this, and we'll catch you on the next one. Adios.